Hey guys, just want to say thanks for tuning in today. Smash that subscribe button if you're new here, and as always, please like this video if you enjoy the stories. Now, let's get into the stories.
I used to think the worst thing that could happen from a dating app was being catfished or stuck listening to someone talk about crypto for an hour. That was my scale for danger. I had a system and rules and jokes about it. Swipe when bored, meet in public, one drink max if the vibe is weird. I thought I was careful. I thought careful meant safe. The night this happened started like a joke I almost didn't show up for. It was late fall, cold but not winter yet, the kind of night where the air smells like wet leaves and car exhaust. I had just moved into a new apartment on the edge of town, the kind of area with half-lit streets and random closed storefronts that never reopen. I was still figuring out where people went to hang out. The bar she picked was one I had never heard of, down a side street with a flickering sign and a chalkboard menu that looked like it had been erased and rewritten too many times. I remember checking my phone outside the place, telling myself I would stay for one drink and then bounce. I remember thinking the door looked heavier than it should have been. I remember stepping inside and feeling like the air was warmer than the street, thick with citrus cleaner and old wood. It wasn't crowded. There were a few people scattered around, all of them older than me, all of them acting like they had been there all night, even though it was barely after dinner. She looked normal. That is the thing that messes with me the most. Not striking, not off, just normal in a way that made my guard drop without me noticing. Hoodie, messy hair, tired eyes. She smiled when she saw me and waved, already sitting at a small table near the back. Nothing about her screamed danger. Nothing about the place did either. It felt boring, which felt safe. We ordered drinks and I stuck to something simple. One cocktail. Nothing fancy. I watched the bartender make it, watched the ice go in, watched the glass slide across the bar. I picked it up myself. There was no point where I wasn't paying attention. That detail loops in my head a lot now. The drink tasted fine. A little sweet, a little bitter. I remember taking a sip and thinking I could finish it quickly and leave. I remember the table feeling slightly sticky under my fingers. I remember her laughing at something I said and the sound feeling louder than it should have been. Then things start skipping. It wasn't like passing out in movies. There was no dramatic fade. It was more like time started dropping frames. 1 second I was sitting upright. The next my head felt too heady for my neck. My thoughts slowed down, like they were moving through mud. I remember thinking I should stand up and failing to do it. I remember my hands not doing what I told them to do. After that, it's fragments. A hallway that wasn't the bar hallway. A door closing. The feeling of being moved, not dragged, but guided. I remember thinking I needed to throw up, and then not being able to feel my stomach at all. I remember cold air on my face, and then nothing. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the cold. It wasn't just cold, it was sharp, but the air itself had edges. My back was against something hard and slick. My skin burned from it. When I tried to move, my legs hit something solid and sloshed. That's when I realized I was in a bathtub. It was filled with ice. Real ice, chunky and uneven, floating in water that had already gone numb against my skin. My clothes were still on, soaked through, heavy and stiff. My head throbbed, not like hangover, but like pressure from the inside. I took a breath and my lungs hurt, like I had been breathing shallow for too long. I sat up too fast, and the room spun. The bathroom was small and unfamiliar. Cheap tile. A mirror with a crack running through one corner. The light was too bright, buzzing faintly. There was no shower curtain, just a rod. No personal stuff on the sink. It felt like a place no one actually lives in. The first thing I did was check myself. That sounds stupid, but if you know the stories, you know why. I tore my jacket open, checked my sides, my stomach, my back. I patted my pockets with shaking hands. My wallet was still there. My phone was still there, though the screen was cracked in a way it hadn't been before. I checked everywhere I could reach, bracing for pain that never came. Nothing was missing. That made it worse. That's when I saw the note. It was sitting on the closed toilet lid, folded once, weighed down with a bar coaster from the place we had been. My hands were shaking so hard it took me a few tries to pick it up. The paper was plain, torn from a notebook, the kind with the blue lines. The message was short. It told me that next time I should not swipe right. No name, no explanation. Just that. I don't know how long I sat there staring at it. Long enough for the ice to start melting, for the cold to turn into a deep ache that crawled into my bones. Long enough for my brain to start catching up and filling in the gaps with worst-case ideas. I got out of the tub eventually, teeth chattering so hard my jaw hurt. My shoes squelched on the tile. I wrapped myself in a towel that smelled like bleach and something sour underneath. I checked the door. It was unlocked. The apartment was empty. One bedroom, bare mattress on the floor, no sheets. Kitchen with no food, just a clean sink and a single glass drying upside down. No photos, no mail, nothing personal. It felt staged, like a set someone forgot to finish. I tried my phone. No signal at first, then one bar. The time said it was late morning. I had lost more than 12 hours. I had messages from friends asking if I made it home. I had one from her sent a few hours after we met. Just a smiley face. Nothing after that. I didn't wait around. I pulled on my wet clothes and left. The hallway outside was narrow and dim. The building smelled like old carpet and dust. No cameras that I could see. No front desk. I stepped out into a different part of town than I expected, near a row of storage units and a closed tire shop. The bar was nowhere in sight. I walked until my legs stopped shaking. I took a bus home and sat in the back, staring at my reflection in the window, trying to figure out if I looked different. I didn't. That bothered me too. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't call the police. I told myself there was nothing to report. Nothing missing. No injuries, just a bad night. But that answer never fully sticks. Over the next few days, things kept feeling off. My phone battery drained faster than usual. My apartment door was unlocked one evening when I got back, even though I knew I had locked it. My head kept replaying moments that might not even be real. The hallway, the door, the way the cold felt like it was meant to wake me up, not hurt me. I tried to find the bar again. I walked the streets near where I thought it was, checking side roads, looking for that flickering sign. I never found it. When I checked the app, her profile was gone. Not unmatched. Gone like it had never existed. I still think about the note. Not just what it said, but why it was left at all. If nothing was taken and nothing was done, then the whole thing was pointless. Unless the point was knowing it could happen. Unless the point was letting me wake up and fill in blanks myself. Sometimes I wonder if there were others. Sometimes I wonder if I was a test run or a joke or just someone who fit a pattern. I still use dating apps, but not the same way. I swipe slower. I meet earlier in the day. I watch mine drink like it's alive. Every now and then, when my apartment is quiet and my phone buzzes with a new match, I remember the ice and the note and the way relief can feel almost as bad as fear. Nothing was missing. That's the lie people always get stuck on. Like that makes it okay. It doesn't. I didn't think the night was going to matter. It started with boredom and a low phone battery and that restless scrolling feeling you get when you should be asleep, but your brain won't shut up. I remember thinking I just wanted something easy, not exciting, not deep, just someone normal to sit across from for a couple hours so the week wouldn't feel so long. That was the mood. Nothing dramatic, nothing risky, just filling time. His profile didn't stand out. That should have been a warning, but I didn't see it that way then. His photos were blurry, like screenshots of screenshots. His bio was short and weirdly empty, but not in a creepy way. More like he didn't care enough to try. I figured that meant low effort, not danger. We matched, traded a few messages, and agreed to meet at a late-night cafe near a college campus. Bright lights, lots of people, constant noise, safe enough. I almost canceled, not because of him, because my hair looked bad and I had a headache and my roommate was hogging the bathroom. I went anyway because I always go anyway. That's kind of my thing. I don't like the idea of being flaky. I grabbed my jacket, checked my reflection, and headed out. The cafe was loud and smelled like burnt espresso and cleaning spray. It was the kind of place that never fully closes, with students slumped over laptops and couples half arguing in corners. I spotted him right away because he was standing, phone already in his hand, front camera open. I noticed it before I noticed his face. From the second we sat down, he kept taking photos. Not just a few. Not the usual awkward first date ones. It was constant. Every few minutes, sometimes every few seconds. He would angle the phone, lean in, pull it back, tilt his head. Sometimes he gestured for me to move closer. Sometimes he just did it without warning, snapping the shot while I was mid-blink or reaching for my cup. I laughed it off at first. People are weird. That's dating now. Everyone documents everything. I told myself he was just insecure or really into social media. But it didn't slow down. If anything, it got worse as the night went on. He took photos of us from above, from below, reflections in the window, our shadows on the floor. He even took a photo of my hands while I was stirring my drink. I remember feeling myself get smaller in my chair. Not scared exactly, just tired, like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. Every time I tried to shift the focus back to anything else, the phone came back up. Flash off, but the screen still lighting my face. I asked him to stop without making a big deal about it. He didn't. He smiled and kept going. I didn't push it. I should have left. I know that now. By the time it felt easier to just write it out and go home. After about an hour, I said I had to head back. I stood up and he took one last selfie, holding the phone low, aiming up. I remember thinking it was a bad angle and almost laughing. That's the photo that shows up the most later. I walked home alone. My apartment was a converted house split into units, old and uneven, with a shared porch and bad locks. I had lived there for almost a year and nothing had ever happened. The street was quiet, lined with trees and parked cars. I went inside, locked the door, kicked off my shoes, and forgot about the night faster than I should have. The next morning, my phone was full of notifications. Not messages, matches. Tinder was blowing up. Match after match after match. Names I didn't recognize. Profiles I had never swiped on. My first thought was a glitch. My second thought was that someone else had my account. I opened one of the profiles and my stomach dropped. It was me. Not exactly me, but close enough. My face was there, slightly smooth, slightly reshaped. My eyes looked a little bigger. My smile looked a little different. The background wasn't my room, but it was convincing. The bio was short and flirty in a way I never write. The location was correct. Too correct. My address was listed. Not vague, not the neighborhood. My actual street. I froze. My hands went numb. I checked another profile. Same face. Different name. Different bio. Same address. Another one. And another. Dozens. Maybe more. All active. All swiping. All matching. I spent the next hour reporting profiles, shaking so hard I had to sit on the floor. Every time one disappeared, two more popped up. I started getting messages. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. The preview text was enough. Men asking when they could come over. Men saying they were nearby. Men saying they were already outside. That's when the knocking started. It was soft at first, like someone testing if anyone was home. I held my breath and stayed still. Then it got louder, heavier, followed by my phone buzzing again. More matches, more messages. I checked the people instinctively and then remembered I wasn't supposed to use that word, and also that my door didn't even have one. I stayed level heart racing, listening to footsteps on the porch. Someone laughed. Someone else knocked again. I didn't answer. Eventually they left. But it didn't stop. All day, on and off. Different people. Different times. Some stayed longer than others. One left something on the porch that I didn't touch. I called Tinder support. I called my building manager. I called my roommate at work and told her not to come home yet. I didn't explain everything. I didn't have the energy. By the afternoon, I figured it out. The photos. Every selfie he took had been uploaded somewhere, edited, reused. My face cut out and dropped onto other bodies, other rooms, other lighting. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. Good enough for a swipe. Good enough for an address. I found one profile that used a photo I remembered clearly. The one from below. The bad angle. He had fixed it. Smoothed my jaw, adjusted my eyes, changed my hairline slightly. It looked more like me than I did that morning. I reported that one too. It stayed up. I didn't leave the apartment for 3 days. My roommate stayed with friends. I slept with my phone in my hand. Every sound made me flinch. Every notification felt like another knock. Eventually, the profile started disappearing for real. Tinder sent me a generic email. No apology. No explanation. Just that they were handling it. The knocking stopped. The messages slowed, then stopped completely. I changed my photos. I changed my name. I turned off my location. I thought that was the end of it. A week later, I got a match request notification from a new app I didn't remember downloading. The profile photo was a selfie I didn't recognize at first. Then I noticed the angle. It was from below. The first thing I remember about her is how fast everything moved. Not in a dramatic way. More like I didn't get time to second guess anything. 1 minute I was half watching a video on my phone, thumb hovering over the screen, and the next minute I was putting on shoes and checking my hair in a dark window. It felt automatic, like muscle memory. That's how most bad nights start for me. Not with a big choice, just a bunch of small ones I don't stop. We matched late. Not the fun late, the quiet late where the app feels emptier and everyone looks tired. Her photos were simple, couch selfies, mirror shots, nothing flashy. Her bio was short and a little awkward, which I liked. We messaged back and forth for maybe an hour. She suggested I come over instead of meeting out. Said she hated bars and didn't want to shout over music. I hesitated for about 10 seconds and then agreed. Her place was across town, in one of those newer apartment buildings that look nice from far away but cheap up close. Lots of gray paint, fake wood floors, thin walls. I remember walking down the hallway and noticing how quiet it was, like everyone was gone even though lights were on behind doors. It smelled faintly like laundry soap and something sweet I couldn't place. When she opened the door, everything still felt normal. She was dressed casual, hair pulled back, barefoot on the cold floor. The apartment was clean but not staged. Couch slightly crooked. Throw blanket on the floor. Dishes in the sink. That kind of mess that makes you relax because it feels real. We sat down and talked. About nothing important. Work stuff. Annoying neighbors. Random app horror stories. She laughed at the right times. I remember thinking she was easier to be around than most dates. No pressure. No weird energy. I started to let my guard down. After a while, she said she wanted to play a game. That's the moment I can pinpoint now. Not because it was obviously bad, but because it felt slightly off in a way I ignored. She didn't explain it right away. Just smiled and said it would be fun. I asked what kind of game and she said I would see. She got up and walked into the bedroom. I stayed on the couch, listening to drawers open and close. When she came back, she was holding a small tablet and a notebook. She sat across from me and set them on the coffee table. The game was simple, she said, guessing. She liked guessing games. I laughed and said I was bad at them. She smiled again and turned the tablet toward me. On the screen was a photo. It took me a second to understand what I was looking at. It was a screenshot from a social media page, a girl I recognized instantly. My stomach tightened before my brain caught up. It was my ex from a few years ago. Not a serious one, but someone I had dated long enough to know well. She asked me to guess who it was. I laughed it off at first, assuming it was a coincidence. People stalk online all the time. Public profiles exist. But then she swiped. Another photo. Another girl. Another ex. This one more recent. Same feeling. That tight drop in my chest, like missing a step on the stairs. She told me the rules then. She had a list. My list. Names, dates, little details. She would show me one at a time, and I had to guess how she knew them. Which app? Which account? Which mutual connection? If I got it wrong, she got a point. If I got it right, I got one. I didn't want to play anymore. My mouth went dry. I asked how she even found this stuff. She shrugged and said people leave trails everywhere. She said it like it was a fun fact. That's when I noticed the camera. It was small, tucked into the corner near the ceiling, angled toward the couch. Black and easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. I felt my face get hot. I scanned the room slowly. Another one near the tea. Another near the kitchen doorway. Tiny lenses, some hidden in plain sight, some half concealed by plants or shelves. I stood up, My legs felt weak, like I had been sitting too long. She didn't stop me. She watched. I walked through the apartment. Bedroom had one too, mounted above the dresser. Bathroom had one above the mirror, angled just enough to see everything. Even the hallway had one, pointed straight at the front door. I asked her what the cameras were for. She said she liked to remember things. She said people forget details, but footage doesn't. She said it made her feel organized. I told her I was leaving. She didn't argue. She just picked up the tablet and scrolled. She showed me another screen without saying anything. It was a grid of video thumbnails, timestamps, dates, my name labeled on a folder. There were clips from earlier that night, me sitting on the couch, me laughing, me leaning forward. There were clips from other nights too, other guys, different faces, same apartment, same couch. She told me the game wasn't really about winning. It was about seeing patterns. She liked to see how similar people were, who dated the same kinds of girls, who repeated mistakes. She showed me notes she had written, not just about my exes, but about me, where I worked, how long I stayed at places, which photos I liked on social media, which accounts I had viewed even if I hadn't followed. She knew things I hadn't told her, things I didn't remember posting. My head felt light, not dizzy, just unreal, like the room had tilted slightly and never leveled out. I backed toward the door. She told me I was doing better than most. She said I was observant. She said she liked that. I got out. The hallway felt longer than before. My footsteps sounded too loud. When I reached the elevator, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I kept expecting the door to open behind me. It didn't. I didn't go home right away. I walked for blocks, breathing cold air, trying to get my thoughts back in order. Every time I thought about the cameras, my skin crawled. Not because of being watched, but because of how normal it had all seemed at first. Over the next few days, things started connecting in my head. The way she suggested coming over so quickly. The way she never asked basic getting to know you questions. The way she listened more than she talked. She already knew the answers. I checked my accounts. Nothing hacked. Nothing obviously wrong. That somehow made it worse. It meant she didn't need to break in. Everything she used was already there. I unmatched her, blocked her, deleted the app for a while. I told myself it was over. A week later, I got a follow request on a platform I barely use. The profile picture was blank. No posts. The username was a string of random letters. I ignored it. The next day, another one. Then another. One of them viewed my story and disappeared. Another liked a photo from years ago and vanished before I could click the profile. I started noticing small things again. My name written wrong on a delivery. Ads that felt too specific. Suggestions that mirrored conversations I hadn't typed. I don't know if she's still watching. I don't know if the game ever really ended. I just know that sometimes, when my phone camera light flickers for no reason, I remember that apartment and the way she smiled like everything was under control.
Hey guys, really sorry to disturb you, but if you're enjoying the stories up until this point, please smash that like button. That's all I'm asking for, you guys. Let's break some records this year. Now back to the stories.
I used to think the scariest part of dating apps was the silence after a good first meet. That weird quiet where you check your phone too much and wonder if you imagine the whole vibe. This story isn't about that. This is about the opposite. About someone paying too much attention. The kind that doesn't feel flattering once you notice it. The kind that feels like your thoughts aren't fully yours anymore. I matched with him during a week where everything felt flat. Same routine, same bus rides, same microwave dinners. His profile stood out because it was calm. No forced jokes. No try-hard energy. Just photos of him smiling in regular places. A park, a kitchen, a blurry group shot where he was clearly the least loud person in it. His messages matched that. Slow replies, full sentences. No weird comments. It felt like talking to someone who actually listened. Our first meet was simple. Coffee shop near my apartment. Early afternoon. Lots of people around. He showed up on time and looked exactly like his photos, which already put him above half the app. The conversation flowed easily. too easily, but I didn't notice that yet. I remember feeling relaxed. I remember thinking this was the easiest date I had in months. We met again a few days later. Then again. Walks, cheap food, sitting on benches complaining about random stuff. Nothing dramatic. Nothing intense. I started telling my friends he was normal, which is basically the highest compliment I'd give anyone from an app. It was during the fourth hangout that I noticed the first weird thing. I was talking about my job, rambling the way I do when I get nervous. I said a sentence without thinking about it, something I've said a million times before. Right after I finished, he said the exact same sentence, same words, same order, same pause in the middle. I laughed and assumed he was joking. People mirror each other sometimes. It's a thing. I didn't think much of it. But then it happened again. Later that night, different topic. I mentioned something about my building being old and loud. Seconds later, he repeated it back to me. Not paraphrased, not reacted to, just repeated, like an echo that was slightly delayed. I stopped mid-sentence and stared at him. He smiled like nothing was off. I felt a little embarrassed, like maybe I was overthinking it. I changed the subject. It kept happening. Not every sentence. Not enough to be obvious right away. Just enough to make my brain itch. I would say something casual, and a moment later, there it was again, coming back at me unchanged. Sometimes with the same tone. Sometimes softer, like he was testing it. I told myself he was nervous. I told myself it was some social habit. I told myself lots of things instead of what I should have told myself, which was that this was not normal. By the time he came over to my apartment for the first time, I had mostly pushed it out of my head. I cleaned more than usual. Checked the locks twice. Nothing about him felt threatening. Just slightly off in a way I couldn't pin down. My apartment is small. Thin walls. You can hear everything. Neighbors coughing, tives, phones vibrating. I've lived there long enough to tune it out. He commented on how quiet it was, which was funny because it never is. We sat on the couch, talked, scrolled through videos. I noticed he wasn't looking at his phone much, mostly watching me. Not in a creepy way, I thought, just attentive. Then it happened again. I said something about my fridge making a weird noise at night. A few seconds passed. Then he said the same thing. Exact wording. Exact pacing. My stomach dropped. I asked him why he kept doing that. He didn't look confused. He didn't deny it. He just nodded like I had finally noticed something obvious. That's when he told me. Not dramatically, not excited, just calm. He explained that he liked to practice conversations, that he wanted to get things right. He said people respond better when they feel understood, and repeating words helps with that. I asked how he knew my wording so well. He told me he lived next door. That part alone wouldn't have been bad. Buildings are small. Coincidences happen. But then he kept going. He told me he had been listening for months. Not secretly in a sneaky way, he said, but passively, like background noise. He told me my walls were thin, that I talk out loud a lot. He told me I repeat phrases when I'm tired. He told me the order I make breakfast. He told me which nights I stay up late, and which nights I fall asleep with the TV on. He told me he practiced. He practiced my voice in his head, practiced my pacing, practiced my reactions. He said that's why our conversations felt easy, because he already knew what I was going to say. I felt like I wasn't fully in my body anymore, like I was watching myself from a few feet away. Every sound in the apartment suddenly felt louder. The hum of the fridge, the buzz of the lights, the faint noise from the other side of the wall. I asked him how long he had known me before we matched. He told me he recognized my photos immediately. He had read my captions before, heard me say similar things out loud. He knew my laugh. He knew the way I complained to myself when I lose my keys. He said matching with me felt inevitable. I stood up. My legs were shaking so badly I had to grab the back of the chair. He didn't move. He didn't reach for me. He just watched, like he was studying my reaction for later. I told him to leave. He did slowly, calmly, like he didn't want to rush the moment. Before he stepped out, he repeated one last sentence I had said earlier that night, word for word. I hadn't even remembered saying it. After the door closed, I slid down to the floor and sat there for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just listened. For the first time since moving in, I heard everything. The pipes, The footsteps, the faint click from the other side of the wall. I couldn't tell if it was real or if my brain was filling in sounds that weren't there. I slept with headphones on that night. Then again the next night. I started whispering when I talked to myself. I stopped playing videos out loud. I changed my routine. Different times, different paths, different food. I unmatched him, blocked him, deleted the app. I told my building manager I thought someone was listening through the walls. They shrugged it off. Thin walls, old building, nothing to do. A week later, I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed with a notification from a random number. No message, just a typing indicator that appeared and disappeared. I turned off the phone and set it face down. That night, as I lay in bed, I caught myself forming a sentence in my head and stopping halfway through, afraid of hearing it again from somewhere else. I almost didn't go because I had a bad feeling that didn't have a reason. Not a dramatic one. Just that low buzz in the back of your head that says tonight might be annoying. I ignored it because I always do. I told myself it was just nerves and that nerves mean nothing. I told myself I needed to get out of my apartment and to stop overthinking everything. That's how this started. Not with excitement. With boredom and a jacket I didn't even like. We matched earlier that week and she mentioned right away that she was a twin. Not in a fun, quirky way. Just casually, like saying she had a dog or hated tomatoes. It didn't stick with me at first. Lots of people are twins. It didn't feel important. Her profile photos looked normal, a few selfies. A couple group shots where I couldn't tell who was who. I'd assumed that was her sister in some of them and moved on. We agreed to meet at a small family-owned restaurant near the edge of downtown. Not trendy. Not loud. The kind of place with laminated menus and uneven tables. I liked that. It felt safe and boring in a good way. She was already there when I walked in, sitting in a booth near the window. I recognized her instantly. Same face as the photos, same smile, same dark jacket folded next to her. She waved and I sat down across from her. Everything felt fine at first. Easy. She talked a lot, but not too much. Laughed at stuff that wasn't that funny. Asked me normal questions. I remember thinking this was going better than expected. I relaxed. I leaned back. I stopped checking my phone. About 20 minutes in, she brought up her twin again. This time with more detail. She said they were very close. Closer than most siblings. She said people mixed them up all the time, that it used to bother her, but now she thought it was funny. She said they shared a lot of things. I didn't think much of it. I nodded and listened. The waiter came and went. Food arrived. Plates clinked. The restaurant stayed half full. Nothing about the setting changed. Then someone slid into the booth beside her. I didn't notice right away because I was looking down at my plate. I noticed when the energy shifted, when the space felt tighter, when the air got heavier like something had moved too close. I looked up and froze. It was her. Not someone who looked like her. Not close. Identical. Same face. Same hair. Same jacket. Even the same small mark near the eyebrow. The only difference I could spot was the expression. This one looked annoyed in a way that felt sharp. She sat down like she belonged there. Like she had always been part of the night. She didn't look at me at first. She looked at the woman I had been talking to and immediately started arguing. No raised voices. No yelling. Just fast, intense back and forth. Heads leaning in. Hands moving. Expressions changing. It was clear they were fighting about me without ever acknowledging me directly. I sat there like a piece of furniture. People at nearby tables noticed. Forks paused midair. Someone glanced over and then looked away too quickly. The waiter slowed down as he passed, clearly trying to figure out if he should intervene. The twin I came with looked angry but controlled. The one who arrived late looked smug, like she had already won something. They kept pointing at me, then at each other, then back at me again. My chest tightened. I tried to interrupt, but they didn't stop. It was like I wasn't there in any real way, just an object being discussed. I stood up slightly, trying to create space, and that's when they both turned and looked at me at the same time. The effect was unreal. Two identical faces locking onto me in perfect sync. Same tilted head, same narrowed eyes, same small smile that didn't reach anywhere warm. They stopped arguing and stared. Then they went back to fighting. This time it was worse, faster, more intense. They started pulling out phones, shoving screens toward each other, pointing, shaking their heads. One of them laughed, and the other slammed her hand on the table hard enough to rattle the silverware. I realized people were fully watching now. No one stepped in. No one asked if everything was okay. It felt like the whole room had decided this was not their problem. I felt trapped in the booth, boxed in by identical shoulders. The smell of their perfume was the same, sweet and too strong. It made my head hurt. I caught fragments of what they were saying without hearing actual words. About time, about turns, about who found me first, about rules that clearly existed long before I walked in. Finally, one of them turned to me, the one who arrived late. She leaned close and smiled like she had already decided something. She said something that made the other one snap back immediately. Whatever it was, it hit a nerve. The argument escalated fast, hands waving, voices louder now. The late twin stood up abruptly, knocking her knee into the table. She pointed at me again and then at her sister like she was making a final claim. I couldn't do it anymore. I slid out of the booth and stood up. My legs felt weak, but I didn't sit back down. I dropped some cash on the table without counting it. I didn't care if it was enough. Both of them stood at the same time. That's when I noticed something else. They moved the same way. Not just similar. Exact. Same step, same posture, same timing. It was like watching a mirror glitch. They blocked the aisle between the tables without meaning to. Or maybe they meant to. I had to squeeze past them, brushing against identical jackets, identical arms. As I walked toward the door, I heard them arguing again behind me, louder now, frustration spilling out. Still about me, still treating me like a prize that had slipped away. I pushed through the door and stepped outside into cold air that felt like relief and panic at the same time. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't look back. I walked fast, then faster. I took turns without thinking. Crossed streets, doubled back. I didn't know if they were following me, and I didn't want to find out. When I finally got home, I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. My phone buzzed immediately. A notification from the app. A message from her. Then another. Then another. 2 profiles, same photos, same bio. Different usernames, both active, both matching my location. I didn't open them. I turned the phone off and set it face down. The next morning, I woke up to missed notifications. More matches. One profile unmatched me. The other stayed. Later that day, I passed someone on the street who looked like them from behind. Same hair, same jacket. When she turned, it wasn't them. But my heart didn't slow down for a long time. I don't know which one I went on a date with. I don't know if it even matters. I just know that somewhere in the city, 2 identical people had a fight about me like I was something to own, and for a moment, I was close enough to be pulled into whatever system they had already built. The first thing that stuck with me wasn't his face. It was the jacket. Thick, black, zipped all the way up even though it was late spring and warm enough that everyone else was in light layers. I noticed it before we even met because it was in every photo. Same jacket, different places. Coffee shop, sidewalk, blurry mirror shot. It felt like a coincidence at first. People have favorite clothes. I didn't think much of it. We matched on a night where I was already annoyed at everything. My room felt too small. My phone battery was low. I had read the same message 3 times and still didn't care. He was polite, calm, and weirdly careful with his words. No flirting, really. Just steady conversation. It felt safe in a boring way, and boring felt good that week. We met at a late-night diner off a highway exit. The kind with cracked vinyl booths and menus that stick together. Bright lights, lots of windows, nowhere to hide. I picked it on purpose. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting stiffly with his hands on the table. The jacket was zipped all the way to his chin. I remember thinking he must be hot. I remember thinking maybe he was insecure about something underneath. Scars, maybe. Braces. People have stuff. It didn't feel like my business. He didn't order much. Barely ate. He kept his arms close to his body, elbows tucked in, shoulders tight. Every time he shifted, the jacket made a faint scraping sound, like fabric rubbing against something harder than it should. The conversation was fine. Not amazing. Not bad. He listened more than he talked. Nodded at the right moments. Sometimes he paused before answering, like he was choosing each word carefully. It didn't bother me. It just felt a little rehearsed. Halfway through, I noticed his right arm didn't move much. He used his left hand for everything. Fork, cup, phone. When he did move the right one, it was slow and stiff, like it hurt or like it wasn't fully his. I asked if he was injured. He said something vague and changed the subject immediately. I let it go again. After we paid, we decided to walk a bit. The air outside was cooler, and I expected him to unzip the jacket. He didn't. Not even a little. His posture stayed rigid, like the jacket was holding him together. As we walked, I caught glimpses of his sleeves shifting. Something underneath that didn't bend right. The shape was wrong. Too straight. Too solid. My brain tried to explain it away. Cast, brace, something medical. Plenty of people wear casts under clothes. We stopped near my building. I wasn't planning on inviting him up. Not because of fear, just because I didn't feel like it. We stood there awkwardly, the moment stretching longer than it needed to. That's when I reached out. I didn't mean to grab him. It was instinct. A light touch on his arm, friendly, automatic. The second my fingers made contact, my stomach dropped. It wasn't fabric over skin. It was hard, solid, cold in a way skin never is. My fingers pressed against something that didn't give it all. Not muscle, not bone, something else. I pulled my hand back immediately. My heart started racing. I looked at him and he looked at me, eyes wide for just a split second before he forced his face back into calm. The sleeve had shifted up slightly. That's when I saw it. Beneath the jacket was a cast. Thick, uneven, wrapped sloppily like it had been rushed. But under the edge of it, just at the wrist, there was skin. Not his skin. It was darker than his, covered in ink. A tattoo I recognized because I had seen it before. Not on him, on someone else. A girl from my building. She lived 2 floors below me. I didn't know her well, but I had seen her arms plenty of times. Full sleeve, bold lines, impossible to mistake. I had complimented it once in the laundry room. My vision tunneled. The street noise faded. All I could focus on was that strip of skin under the cast, pressed into a shape it didn't belong in. My brain tried to scream, but my body froze. He noticed where I was looking. He didn't pull away. He didn't try to hide it. He just stood there, breathing shallow, waiting. The jacket shifted again as he adjusted his stance, and the cast creaked softly. Not like plastic, like something under pressure. I stepped back. My thoughts were messy and loud. Nothing lined up. Nothing made sense in a way that felt safe. Casts don't go over tattoos like that. People don't wear other people's skin. My brain rejected the idea even as my eyes refused to look away. I asked him what it was. He took a long breath. Then he did something worse than lying. He started explaining. Not emotionally. Not nervously. Just like he was talking about a repair job or a project. He said it helped with healing. He said it helped him feel close. He said the jacket was necessary because people asked too many questions otherwise. I don't remember all of it. My mind blocked pieces out, but I remember one thing clearly. He said it wasn't the first one. My legs unlocked all at once. I turned and walked toward my building without thinking. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I just walked fast, like if I kept moving this would stay unreal. I got inside and slammed the door behind me, locking it so hard my hand hurt. I stood there shaking, listening for footsteps that never came. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed with the lights on, phone in my hand, refreshing my building group chat, my messages, anything. I didn't know what I was looking for. Confirmation. Denial. Something. The next morning there was a post. Someone asking if anyone had seen the girl from 2 floors down. She hadn't been answering messages. Her job had called her emergency contact. Her apartment was locked from the inside. I felt sick. I scrolled through the comments, heart pounding. No updates, no answers, just confusion. I called the police and told them what I knew. Not everything. I couldn't say everything. The words wouldn't come out right. I told them about the jacket, the cast, the tattoo. I told them where we met. I showed them his profile. It was gone. His account, gone, unmatched, disappeared like it had never been there. They took my statement. They nodded. They wrote things down. They asked questions I didn't have answers to. Days passed. The girl was never officially found. Not announced, not posted. Her name stopped coming up in the chat. Someone moved into her unit a month later. I stopped using the app. I stopped going to that diner. I started noticing jackets everywhere. Thick ones, zipped too high, sleeves that didn't bend right. Sometimes when I'm walking home at night, I catch myself staring at people's arms, looking for seams where there shouldn't be any. The worst part is how close it all felt. Not dramatic close, just one touch, 1 second longer, one step slower. I should have just deleted Tinder that night. I read the messages again and again, trying to convince myself that blocking him was enough. It wasn't. I blocked him after our date, which I thought was bad, but not scary, just weird, the kind of person you avoid, but eventually laugh about. His profile pictures were fine, normal guy stuff, but there was something off about him in real life. He smiled too much, laughed too loud, leaned in too close. He kept repeating words, asking questions that didn't make sense, and I left as fast as I could without causing a scene. I felt relieved when I got home, locked the door, and convinced myself I'd never see him again. The next day, I opened Tinder to delete the app, but before I could, I saw a new match. Different name, different photos, same kind of normal-looking guy vibes. I almost swiped left without thinking, but something made me pause. I figured maybe he was harmless, maybe just someone new. The first message popped up, and that's when I noticed it. He typed exactly like the guy I blocked. Same casual rhythm, same spacing, same weird spelling mistakes, like he didn't notice he was missing letters or hitting the wrong keys. It started off subtle, a typo here, a missing letter there, but after a few messages, it was the same. I froze for a second, trying to convince myself it was coincidence. But it wasn't. Every sentence, every pause between words, the way he punctuated messages, it was identical. I decided to play it cool. I didn't want to block him yet, not without proof. So I responded casually, just enough to see if he really was copying the other guy or if I was imagining it. The more I texted, the more it became obvious. He didn't just type like him. He used the same phrases, same jokes, same tiny pauses between sentences. It was like the first guy had cloned himself with a new face. I checked the photos over and over, trying to spot a familiar feature, but they were all different enough that I couldn't pinpoint anything. But I just knew it was him. I started checking everything about the new profile. The photos had a weird sense of familiarity, the kind you only notice after staring too long. I tried reverse image searches, nothing came up. He lived in a different part of town, according to the profile, a few miles away. I thought maybe it was some elaborate scam, some hacker thing. Maybe someone was trying to mess with me. But I hadn't mentioned anything personal in the app that he could have known. Nothing. The timing alone was enough to creep me out. Blocked one day, matched with a new guy the next, same typing. I tried to set up a casual meeting just to see him in person to confirm it wasn't someone else, but I couldn't bring myself to go. Instead, I asked questions that seemed normal, small talk about movies, coffee, work, just to gauge if the pattern continued. It did. Every message felt like deja vu. Every joke landed exactly how the previous guy would have made it land. My stomach sank with every notification, my heart pounding. I didn't want to open the messages, but I couldn't stop. I had to see if it was real. It was. After a few hours, I noticed something else. The new guy's pictures didn't change. even though he claimed to be out doing things, traveling, going to a coffee shop. It was just the same staged photos over and over. But the texts were alive, moving, typing like someone was behind a keyboard in real time. I tested it. I sent messages at random times, different words, new topics. He adapted instantly, same style, same mistakes, same pauses. The way he spelled everything, the tiny quirks, it was too precise. It was like the first guy had memorized my entire texting pattern and was following me around, making a new account just to keep talking. I deleted the app and read the notifications. Nothing disappeared. I swore the texts were still there, even without the app open, even on my phone notifications. I checked my phone logs, my settings, everything. There was no way the messages should exist. And yet, they did. Every time I opened the phone, it felt like he was still there, typing the same messages waiting for me. I tried ignoring it, but the text kept showing up, same rhythm, same typos, same spacing. My chest felt tight every time I read one, even though the profile photos were just random people, faces that weren't him. I stopped going out. I stopped talking to friends about it because they'd think I was crazy. I stopped looking at my phone, stopped checking the app. But the text found me anyway. Notifications would pop up from the same unknown number, mimicking the same typing style. Sometimes they would say nothing, just the indicator showing 3 dots like someone was typing, pause for a few seconds, then disappear. I would watch it, heart racing, every time hoping it was just a glitch. It wasn't. It was him, or whatever it was. A week later, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone had stolen my data. Maybe it was some weird AI experiment using the old guy's account to send messages. But it felt personal. Too personal. The first date, the blocking, the exact same timing. It was all too precise to be random. I started taking screenshots, documenting everything, trying to prove I wasn't crazy. Every screenshot looked normal, just texts, just words. But when I looked closer, I noticed subtle patterns. The new guy, whoever he was, would always start a sentence with the same word the first guy used at the same time, even if it didn't make sense. Every text, every pause, everything lined up. I deleted my phone and got a new one. Changed numbers. Downloaded a different app to avoid Tinder. And for a while, it seemed gone. No messages, no notifications, nothing. I felt a little relief, thinking maybe it had just been a digital mess that got cut off. But then a new text came from a number I didn't know. Same rhythm, same spacing, same typos. No photo, no profile, just the words appearing on my screen one at a time like the other two, mimicking me typing. I could feel it. I could feel him watching, tracking, following every message I typed. It wasn't just a person. It was something that could reproduce itself through words, through rhythm, through the little ways I noticed someone texting. I don't go on dating apps anymore. I don't reply to unknown numbers. I haven't matched anyone new. But sometimes, late at night, I catch myself staring at my phone, watching the blank screen, waiting for it to light up, waiting for him to appear again. Different photos, same rhythm, same typos. And I know no matter what I do, he will keep finding ways to type to me. Maybe he's waiting for me to answer. Maybe he's just testing the rhythm. I don't know. All I know is that it's him, hiding behind new faces, and he's learned my patterns now. I can't block him forever. He doesn't need an account to reach me. He just types, waits, and I see it every time, exactly the same way. I never really believed in anything supernatural, which is probably why this got under my skin so badly. It all started with Tinder, like every stupid story I read about online dating. I matched with a girl who seemed normal at first. She had that casual, just out of bed look in her pictures, messy hair, hoodie, coffee in hand, smiling like she didn't even know she was cute. Nothing overdone, nothing weird. I swiped right without thinking and we started talking. Her texts were easygoing, funny, and at some point, she suggested meeting at this small arcade she said she liked. It sounded chill, so I agreed. When I got there, I noticed her immediately. She was shorter than I expected, hair tied back, hoodie and jeans like in her pics. She smiled at me and I waved back, trying to act casual. We played air hockey, skee ball, and some racing game. She was good, better than me, and I was already sweating from embarrassment when she laughed at me losing. Nothing felt off yet. Then we left, and she suggested grabbing a coffee at this little cafe nearby that had mirrors everywhere. I didn't think much of it at first, just followed her inside. That's when it started. In the cafe, there were mirrors on the walls, above the bar, even on the ceiling in one section. I noticed the reflections right away. At first, it was subtle, almost dismissible. She was in the mirror like she should be, but her reflection didn't move exactly like her. I thought I was imagining things. Then I noticed in a corner mirror there was another version of her, standing still, staring right at me while she talked to me in real life. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone was behind the glass. Maybe it was an optical illusion. I told myself it was nothing. We moved to another table, this one next to a long mirror along the wall. And that's when I started noticing all of them. Not just one reflection, but small versions, all slightly different. One had her smile too wide, another tilted her head in a way that didn't make sense. Some had eyes that seemed darker than normal, staring at me so hard it was like they were waiting for something. And I realized the reflections weren't copying her movements exactly. They weren't moving in sync. They were watching me, not her. I started sweating even though the cafe was warm, tried to laugh it off, said I needed a drink, just go to the counter. I left the table and walked slowly to the counter, keeping an eye on her, and the reflections were still there. Every angle I moved, every mirror I passed, there were more of her. They were slightly different, and they all were staring. Some looked sad, some angry, some almost smug. I didn't know what was happening. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, maybe my brain was playing tricks. But then one of the reflections leaned forward slightly, and her mouth moved in a way that didn't match the real her. She didn't say anything, but it looked like she was mouthing my name. I paid for a coffee I wasn't going to drink and tried to walk outside, thinking if I left, it would stop. She followed me, smiling casually like nothing was wrong. I thought about saying something, but I couldn't even find the words. On the street, I read my phone, hoping a text or a call could ground me in reality, but my screen started flickering, and then I noticed it. Every reflective surface we passed, windows, car mirrors, even puddles, had another version of her staring at me. I started to panic, heart hammering, legs shaking, trying not to look too hard because each time I did, the version seemed closer, almost alive. I didn't know if I should run or just leave with her and hope it stopped. I was frozen when we passed a shop with one of those huge front windows. I could see dozens of her, layered over each other in impossible ways. And then I realized something worse. None of the reflections were blinking at the same time as her. Every time she blinked in real life, the ones in the glass didn't. It was subtle at first, but the pattern was there, undeniable. And then one of the reflections in the back moved toward me, but she wasn't moving at all. My stomach dropped. I didn't even know what to think anymore. I excused myself, said I had to take a call, and ran into an alley nearby. I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe, but every reflective surface around me, windows of the closed stores, shiny signs, even the wet asphalt from the rain, showed her. The alley should have been empty, dark, normal, but her reflections were everywhere. Some smiling, some glaring, some looking like they were whispering things I couldn't hear. I felt trapped. I couldn't tell which one was real, if any of them were. After what felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes, I finally convinced myself to walk back slowly toward the main street. She was there standing by the curb, smiling, holding her coffee like nothing happened. I didn't look at the mirrors this time, just kept my eyes on the ground until I got into my car. I drove home without stopping, watching the road, trying not to think about the reflections. But even then, in the rearview mirror, I swore I saw her eyes watching me. Not from the street behind, not the real world, but inside the mirror itself. I shook my head, told myself it was my imagination, but it didn't help. The next day, I checked her profile. It was gone, wiped clean. Not just unmatched, deleted. And every picture I had seen, every message, it was like it never existed. I tried searching her name, the city, anything that could connect to her, but nothing came up. No social media, no public records, no pictures anywhere. It was like she'd never been real. But I knew she was because I could still see her reflections in my apartment windows at night. Subtle at first, blurred like my eyes were tricking me. But the more I looked, the clearer they got. They stared at me, always slightly different, sometimes smiling, sometimes leaning forward, always watching. I moved apartments after a week, thinking distance would help, thinking maybe I just read something weird online and it wasn't real. But even there, every mirror, every shiny surface had her. I stopped looking in mirrors whenever I could, covered reflective surfaces, avoided the sun hitting windows. And I realized that no matter what I did, she was there. Different versions of her always staring. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I know that no matter where I go, I can't escape the reflections. The girl I thought was normal on Tinder wasn't normal at all, and whatever she was, she doesn't just exist in the real world. She exists wherever she wants, wherever she can be seen, and she watches. I never thought I'd meet someone on a dating app who would make me feel like reality itself was broken. I meshed with a woman who had this calm, distant kind of energy, the type that makes you curious and nervous at the same time. Her profile photos were all over the place, one in a coffee shop, one on a rooftop at sunset, one in a forest. But the thing that drew me in wasn't the pictures. It was her bio. She wrote that she could see how people died. I laughed the first time I read it, assuming it was some edgy joke, some attempt to stand out. I swiped right without thinking, and somehow she matched back. We texted for a few days. At first, it was small talk, memes, the usual casual nonsense. But then the conversation shifted naturally into deeper stuff. She mentioned her gift casually, like it was just part of her, nothing special. I thought she was exaggerating, maybe testing me, seeing how I'd react. I tried to keep it light, like, okay, weird, but whatever. She was smart, had a sense of humor, and I didn't want to blow it off just because of one strange claim. We set up a date at this little Italian place I'd never been to before, tucked into a street I didn't even know existed. It had dim lighting, the kind that made everything look warmer than it really was, and a faint smell of garlic and old wood. She arrived wearing a dark jacket and a scarf, her eyes calm but intense, like she was looking right through me. I felt a little uneasy at first, but I convinced myself it was just attraction mixed with nerves. Over dinner, she didn't talk much at first. I dominated the conversation like an idiot, trying to keep it normal, but she laughed quietly, and every time I said something, she would tilt her head and say that she already knew what I was going to say. I assumed it was a lucky guess or intuition, but as the night went on, it started to feel off. She was eerily accurate, predicting not just the things I would say, but the way I would react, the pauses I'd take, and the tone I'd use. It was like she'd seen this night before, or maybe every night like it. At some point, she leaned back and told me that she could see the moment someone would die. Not everyone, she said, just people she connected with, people who mattered in some way. She said it without judgment, without fear, almost scientifically, like it was data on a screen rather than a human life. I tried to make a joke, trying to ease the tension, but she just nodded. Her eyes didn't laugh, and her smile didn't reach them. The more she spoke, the more I felt like I was already in a nightmare I didn't recognize. I walked her to her car after dinner, and it was quiet, the streets empty except for a few stray cats. I tried to act normal, asking if she wanted to do this again sometime, but she said nothing that night, just smiled faintly and drove off. I thought I'd be fine, chalked it up to a weird first date with a strange woman, something I'd tell my friends over drinks later and laugh about. That night, though I couldn't sleep, her words kept repeating in my mind, her calm certainty about life and death. Then the next morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from her. The words were simple. Sorry. I was wrong. It's worse. I didn't know what she meant. My stomach dropped. I stared at my phone, waiting for her to clarify, to say it was a joke, to tell me she meant something else. But nothing came for hours. I tried to convince myself it was some kind of weird flirting, a cryptic way to start a conversation, but my instincts told me otherwise. The day after that, I kept checking my phone, expecting another message, some explanation. Nothing. Every little sound made me jump. I went to work, but I couldn't focus. I kept imagining her at dinner, the way she had looked right through me, the certainty in her voice when she said she could see how people died. I couldn't shake it. My friends noticed, but I just said I wasn't sleeping well. The truth was worse than lack of sleep. It was fear creeping in slowly, quietly, the kind that doesn't let you relax for even a second. I started retracing the date in my head, every detail, every street we walked, every turn she took, every pause in her speech. I realized I couldn't remember her talking about anything normal after the initial introductions. Everything was about people, life, death, timing. I thought about what she could have seen about me, how she phrased her words, how calm she was. Her certainty about death made my own mortality feel sudden, like someone had flicked on a light in a room I hadn't realized was dark. That night, I got another text. It wasn't from her, not really. Just a single message notification that popped up while I was brushing my teeth. My hands froze. My phone lit up. Sorry, I was wrong. It's worse. I felt like I was living in some kind of sick loop. I didn't respond. I didn't want to. I didn't even want to read it. But I couldn't stop looking at it. Couldn't stop thinking about what could be worse than seeing how someone dies. The following week was a haze. I avoided going out, avoided my usual routines, avoided checking my phone, even though I wanted to know what she would say next. I started noticing little things, coincidences, patterns. A car passing by twice, a shadow in a window, a stranger at the corner that reminded me of her smile. My brain was playing tricks on me, but I couldn't convince myself that it was just imagination. Every time I tried to relax, I pictured her calm, seated at dinner, analyzing, seeing something about me I couldn't even guess. I considered blocking her number, deleting her contact, trying to erase any trace of her from my life. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Part of me was too terrified to face what might come if I cut off all contact. The last thing she said, that simple sentence, was like a seed of dread implanted in my chest. I couldn't tell anyone without sounding insane, without having to explain why a stranger's words had managed to immobilize me for days. I started avoiding anything that reminded me of her. I stopped coming to the cafes I normally frequented, stopped walking the streets we had been on, even took different routes to work. It was exhausting, but my mind kept returning to that one sentence, that calm statement about something worse than seeing death. I realized that I wasn't just afraid of her or the claims she made. I was afraid of the certainty she carried, the knowledge that some part of her mind had already processed my fate and I hadn't. Then I noticed it in small, quiet ways. A shadow moving just outside my apartment, the way a stranger's smile briefly mirrored hers, the way someone in the store looked at me for a moment too long. Every detail made my heart race. I knew it wasn't coincidence. I wasn't sure if she was actually watching or if my own mind was trying to make sense of what had happened, but the dread was real. It had sunk into me and wouldn't leave. Weeks later, I got another text, the same phrase, repeated. Sorry, I was wrong. It's worse. At that point, I didn't even read it properly. I just turned my phone off and left it in a drawer. I didn't answer. I didn't open it. But the dread remained, lodged somewhere deep in my chest. A constant reminder of that night, her calmness, the way she saw things no one else could. I started to dread every day, every moment, because her words had reshaped the way I view the future. Even now, I think about her when something unusual happens. A strange noise, a car that lingers too long at the light, a shadow in the corner of my vision. I can't stop imagining what she saw when she looked at me. I can't stop thinking about what could be worse than seeing someone die. Her message was a door that opened into a hallway and I didn't want to walk down. And now I live in that hallway, listening for sounds, seeing signs, unable to close the door. It's not a story I tell anyone. People would laugh, call me paranoid, say I'm imagining things. But I know what I saw, what I felt, the calmness in her eyes, the certainty in her voice, the sentence that keeps repeating itself in my head. Sorry, I was wrong. It's worse. That's the only truth left from that night, and it's enough to keep me awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that maybe somehow she's not right. But I know she is. Somehow she is. I thought dating apps were just a pain in the ass, a way to pass time and maybe meet someone cool, but this one night ruined my whole trust in normalcy. I matched with this guy who seemed funny in a weird, dry way. His pictures were all outdoorsy, random selfies at coffee shops, one with a dog he clearly didn't own. And his bio said stuff like organized, goal-oriented, loves planning. I laughed at the profile and swiped right, not expecting anything serious. We texted for a few days and then decided to meet up. Our first date was at a small cafe in the city I don't usually go to. It smelled like burnt espresso and pastries that had sat out too long, but it had charm. He sat across from me and talked nonstop about compatibility, how people had a natural rhythm, how he calculated the odds that we would be perfect for each other. I nodded along, trying to laugh when he did, but there was something intense in the way he said it. Not creepy in a classic sense, more like obsessive. He had spreadsheets on his phone that he was willing to show me about compatibility scores, favorite music overlap, even work habits. I thought he was joking at first, but the way he explained it made it sound serious, like he'd been planning this for months. I went home thinking the date was just strange, not scary. I told myself some people were just a little too into self-analysis, but the next day he sent me a link. I didn't know what it was at first, but it opened to a Google Calendar. My first thought was, maybe it was a joke, but the calendar wasn't empty. It was titled with both of our names. At first, there were normal-looking events like coffee date, dinner, and movie night, scheduled a few weeks in advance. Then I scrolled down further, and it got weird fast. There were dates for our engagement weeks from now, listed with locations and venues. It wasn't just a thought. He had planned it down to the florist and the rings. Even stranger, there were future events labeled breakup and her disappearance months later. The disappearance entry didn't have a location, just a time. My stomach dropped. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a joke, a weird personality thing. But the precision, the detail, the calm certainty in every single entry made it impossible to shrug them off. The entries weren't just notes either. They had reminders, checklists, and sub-events. For the engagement, there was a whole sequence of reminders. Pick the cake, confirm photographer, pick colors, buy rings. For the breakup, he had reminders about apology gift, send letter, clean apartment for her departure. For the disappearance, there were subtle things listed like remove evidence, lock doors, dispose of personal items. I stared at my screen in disbelief. My hands shook so hard I had to set the phone down. I thought about confronting him, but I kept scrolling, finding more. There were lists of traits, habits, things he expected me to say or do. There were notes about my job schedule, my usual grocery store trips, the route I walked my dog. It was like he had tracked me for months. I didn't feel scared at first. I felt a surreal kind of disbelief. Like, could someone actually plan someone else's life like this? The more I looked, the more I realized he wasn't joking or casual about it. He was methodical, obsessed. I went to our next date, hoping to act normal, hoping that seeing him in person would make all this seem less real. But every time he spoke about compatibility, it was like he was narrating from the calendar. Every suggestion he made, every plan he had, he mentioned it with this quiet confidence that suggested he already had it scheduled. He wasn't just organized. He was rehearsed, prepared, ready. Every step he took was aligned with this timeline he had created. After that night, I tried to avoid him. I changed my routines, avoided my usual spots, even skipped a couple of appointments. But the calendar kept showing up in my mind, every detail, the way he had laid out my life. I wondered how many people he had done this to before me. Did he create a calendar for each person he dated? Did he follow through with all the plans for everyone else? I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started noticing things around me that matched entries. A coffee shop visit suddenly lined up with one of his planned dates. I realized he had a deep knowledge of my schedule, which made my blood run cold. I felt like a character in a story someone else was writing, one that I couldn't control. Even when he wasn't around, his presence was in my life through the meticulous planning he had done. It was suffocating, the realization that my entire routine had been accounted for in some sick timeline. Then I remembered the disappearance entry. That was the one that kept me awake at night. I couldn't stop imagining what he meant by it. He had written it down like it was a casual appointment, something to tick off the list. I felt panic rise every time I thought about it, but I didn't want to involve the police because I didn't know if he'd actually done anything yet. I just had to keep my distance, hope he wouldn't act, and hope I could disappear quietly if I needed to. I started taking precautions. I stopped using the same grocery store. I took different routes to work. I didn't answer calls from unknown numbers. Every new event I discovered in the calendar in my memory made me jump. I started imagining all the steps he had already planned for the engagement, the breakup, and the disappearance. The logical mind in me tried to dismiss it, but the obsessive detail made it impossible. It wasn't fantasy. It was a schedule, his schedule, and I was the main event. Eventually, I decided I had to block him completely. I deleted his number, blocked him on every app, and changed my email address. But even then, the calendar haunted me. I kept replaying the entries in my head, the engagement with flowers and cake, the breakup with apologies and cleaning, the disappearance with no location. Every time I thought I was safe, I imagined him opening his laptop and checking the next step in his timeline, perfectly calm, just like he had planned. I couldn't even tell anyone about it without sounding insane. Friends thought I was exaggerating or making a joke, but it wasn't a joke. I still dream about the calendar sometimes, about the precise timing, the meticulousness, the certainty in every step. It made normal dating feel impossible. Every time I meet someone new, I wonder if they're following a similar plan, if they're keeping their own calendar with my life scheduled in advance. I never went back to the cafe, never tried to see him again. I don't know if he notices I'm gone or if he's already moved on to the next person and the next calendar. All I know is that I can't stop thinking about it. I never want to swipe right on another app again. The horror wasn't him being violent. It was him planning my entire life like I was an object to be organized, scheduled, and ultimately erased. That kind of obsession is worse than anything I could have imagined, and I don't even know if it's over. Even now, months later, I sometimes check my own calendar when I wake up, almost hoping that none of my appointments have been secretly filled in by someone else, just in case. That's how deep it got into my head, the sense that someone else could pre-plan my entire life while I went about mine oblivious. I deleted the calendar, but it's still there in my mind, every entry, every date, every task planned with terrifying accuracy. I never imagined a night that started like any other could end in something that made me question reality for weeks. I met her on Tinder, which I usually scroll through lazily, swiping right more out of boredom than interest. Her profile was all weirdly aesthetic photos of her in forests and coffee shops. Nothing that screamed danger, just quiet and artsy. We started texting, the usual memes and jokes. Then one night it led to meeting up. I told myself I wasn't looking for anything serious, just hanging out, so I wasn't even nervous. We met at her apartment, which was one of those older buildings with cracked paint on the walls and hallways that smelled faintly like wet carpet and incense. Her place smelled like vanilla and old books, a weirdly comforting combo that made it easy to let my guard down. The night itself was kind of a blur, and I woke up the next morning feeling groggy and weirdly calm, except that something in the room felt off. I noticed movement at the edge of my vision before I even opened my eyes fully. When I looked up, she was sitting on the floor by the edge of the bed, calmly braiding my hair. My first thought was confusion. Why would she be touching my hair? Then I realized I hadn't remembered her even mentioning that she liked hair or braiding. I tried to sit up, but she gently pushed me back down, like she knew I was going to panic. That's when she said why she was doing it. She said she needed a strand from every man she dated to keep the dreams away. I froze, my brain struggling to even process what that meant. At first, I thought maybe I misheard her or that it was some kind of weird joke. She was completely calm, humming quietly while pulling a small strand of my hair into the braid, the kind of braid that looked neat and deliberate. She said she'd been doing it for a long time, every guy she'd been with, and that if she didn't, the nightmares would follow her. I couldn't even react. My throat felt dry, my stomach twisting. I wanted to move to run, but my body felt frozen under her gaze. I started noticing the apartment more closely while she worked. There were jars on the shelves, all labeled with names, and inside each jar were strands of hair, all different colors, some short, some long, some tied into little bundles. Some jars were dusty, some looked newer. My brain was trying to put it together, but it was like trying to solve a puzzle missing half the pieces. She had jars for every single person she mentioned she'd been with. My hair, she said, would go in the newest jar once she was done. The whole time she was braiding, she didn't talk much except for explaining this routine. I could see the care she put into each braid, how carefully she separated my hair, pulled it through the strands she already had. It was like a ritual, almost hypnotic in the way she worked. I kept thinking about how many other guys had been here before me, how long she had been doing this, and what would happen if someone tried to stop her. The thought made my stomach drop. She said she needed it to stop the dreams, but I started thinking about what kind of dreams would make someone do this. They weren't nightmares of a scary movie, she said. They were something worse, dreams that followed her everywhere. I tried to argue in my head, tried to convince myself it was harmless, just a weird superstition. But looking at those jars full of hair, knowing she did this every time, made it impossible to just shrug it off. I realized then that she was completely organized. Every braid she did was meticulous. She kept track of the dates she collected hair. Sometimes she labeled the jars with tiny sticky notes that had initials, the day, and a short word like good or bad, depending on the encounter. I could feel the weight, the absurdity mixed with fear settling over me. It wasn't violent, not yet, but the obsession, the care, and the ritualistic way she approached it was terrifying in a quiet, creeping way. I tried to act normal, thinking if I didn't freak out, maybe she wouldn't think I'd seen too much. But every time she reached for another section of my hair, my mind raced. I thought about escaping, but the apartment was a maze of narrow hallways, bookshelves, and furniture that she clearly used to control how people moved. I could feel her eyes on me even when she wasn't looking directly, a sense that she was watching my reactions carefully. Then I noticed something else. Pictures pinned to the wall. Polaroids of guys she'd been with, all smiling, none aware of what she'd been doing with their hair. The way she arranged them around her bed was almost shrine-like. It clicked then that this wasn't just a harmless superstition. It was her whole life, a daily routine that everyone who got close enough became part of. And now I was part of it. I tried to stay calm, pretending to sleep while she worked, but she would occasionally tap my forehead lightly, checking if I was awake. She explained each braid, how it connected to the others, how it balanced the energy. I didn't want to look, but my eyes kept wandering to the jars, to the notes, to the tiny strands that were already pulled and ready for her next move. I felt trapped in this calm, methodical horror. Eventually, she finished the braid and told me it would stay for a few days. She said it would help keep the nightmares away, which made my stomach twist because I realized she was talking about her dreams, not mine. That was the terrifying part, the sense that I was just an ingredient in her ritual. I didn't know whether to laugh at the absurdity or scream. I stayed still, nodding, trying to act like this was normal. She left me there, telling me not to touch the braid, that it would unravel the magic if I did. I spent the next few hours quietly untangling what just happened. My hair felt heavy, like some part of me was gone, added to a collection I didn't want to be part of. I couldn't think straight. I didn't want to leave, but I had to. I waited until she left the room, grabbed my coat, and walked out slowly, making sure I didn't bump into her. The hallway smelled of vanilla and old books, but it no longer felt comforting. It felt like a trap I had barely escaped. Once outside, I tried to act normal, walked down the street pretending I had somewhere to go, but my hands were shaking. I didn't even look at my phone until I was several blocks away. Then I booked a ride home without thinking. On the way, I kept replaying her movements, the way she had smiled calmly, the jars lined up on the shelves. I kept imagining strands of my hair mixed in with others, part of this strange, obsessive collection. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her sitting on the floor, the braid in my hair, humming quietly, arranging the jars. I tried to tell myself it was harmless, that it was just weird behavior, but the clarity that this was her whole ritual and I had been dragged into it made my stomach churn. I kept replaying every moment, every small movement, the careful way she had worked, the serenity in her voice. It wasn't violent, but it was completely unhinged in a way that made every normal hookup I had ever had seem tame in comparison. I avoided dating apps for a while after that. I didn't know how to explain what happened without sounding insane. Even now, months later, if I see someone carefully twisting strands of hair, my stomach flips. I never went back to her apartment, never tried to confront her. I just erased her number, blocked her on everything, and hoped she didn't remember which braid was mine. The weirdest part is how calm it all was. There was no screaming, no sudden movement, Just a quiet obsession that felt like it could stretch forever, and I realized I had been part of it for just a few hours. Sometimes I wonder how many dice she's collected since. I don't want to think about it, but I can't help myself. The calm, deliberate nature of the whole thing haunts me more than anything else. Not the hair, not the jars, but the way she made it all seem normal. That's the part I can't forget. I'd never thought a dating app could mess me up this bad. I matched with this guy, let's call him G, because honestly, I don't even want to remember his real name. His profile was just pictures of him hiking, eating pizza, doing normal stuff, and his bio was kind of funny, the kind that makes you swipe right without thinking. We texted for like a week, nothing weird, just normal small talk, memes, the usual stuff. Then he asked me out. The plan he pitched was weird. He didn't want to meet at a bar, a cafe, or park. He wanted to meet at a storage unit. At first, I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he sent me the address and the unit number. I was already kind of curious, not gonna lie. I convinced myself it was some kind of quirky art project, or maybe he was moving and just wanted help. Stupid me. I got there at exactly the time he said, and the place was on the sketchy side of town, like a strip of storage units with flickering lights and cracked asphalt. There wasn't anyone around. I saw a small tan minivan parked near his unit and thought maybe he was moving boxes or something. The door to the unit was halfway open. I knocked on it and he waved me in like this was totally normal. The inside was way smaller than I imagined. Bare cement walls, fluorescent lights that buzzed like they were about to die, and a weird smell that was like a mix of dust, old fabric, and something I couldn't put my finger on. But what got me was the boxes. They were stacked in neat rows all the way to the ceiling, and each box had a name written on it in black Sharpie. At first, I assumed it was like a packing thing, like he had been moving or helping friends store stuff. Then I saw that the names weren't familiar, not random labels. They were women's names, all women, and underneath some of the names, there were dates, not like birth dates, but like the day he put the box there. I froze and tried to act casual, thinking maybe I was reading too much into it. He smiled at me like everything was fine and said he had a way of keeping past mistakes organized. I felt a knot in my stomach, but I tried to move closer to the light so I could see better. One box had a scarf sticking out the top. Another had a pair of shoes that looked like someone had just worn them last week. Some boxes were taped shut. Others were just folded over, but still clearly full of stuff. I couldn't breathe. My brain was screaming at me that this was wrong, but I didn't want to seem like a total idiot for asking why. He started walking me through the rows like it was some kind of museum tour. He picked up a box with the name Molly on it and said she didn't work out because she couldn't appreciate a good collector's mindset. My heart literally stopped. I didn't say anything. I just nodded like I understood. But really, I just wanted out. I kept trying to find an excuse to leave, but he was so calm, so casual, like this was a completely normal thing to him. He pulled out a picture from one of the boxes, a selfie of a woman smiling, and just showed it to me as if it were a trophy. My stomach dropped, and I started feeling sick. As he kept showing me more boxes, I noticed something else. The stuff inside wasn't just clothes or shoes. There were journals, phone chargers, little makeup bags, even a pair of earbuds in a case. All personal things. And the weirdest part was how intact it all looked, like he hadn't just thrown it in a box and walked away. He had handled it carefully. My brain was spinning. Who keeps someone's personal stuff like this? And why? I tried to focus on the exit. I told myself if I could just make it to the door, I could run. But he had somehow blocked the path with boxes, and every time I tried to move around, he would pivot and stand in my way, smiling. It wasn't aggressive, just confident. Too confident. Like he knew exactly how I was feeling and enjoyed it. I could hear my own heart beating in my ears. Then he pulled out another box, this one labeled with a name I actually recognized from work. My blood ran cold. He said, I was hoping you'd like to see this one, and opened it just enough to show a backpack with a small notebook sticking out. I could see her initials written on the notebook. The thought that this could be mine someday made my throat close up. I didn't even want to ask how he got it. He started talking about patterns, how he didn't do anything bad, he just collected them. He said it like it was a hobby, like stamp collecting or baseball cards. I couldn't look at him anymore. I had to move. I told him I had to go and tried to step backward toward the door. He blocked me again, but this time he started saying how rare it was to find someone who would appreciate his system. I realized in that moment he wasn't just harmlessly weird, he was dangerous. I faked a phone call and bolted. I didn't look back, ran across the cracked asphalt to my car, and didn't even check the street before slamming the doors. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely start the ignition. I called my best friend while driving away, crying and laughing at the same time, trying to explain it. My friend told me to call the cops, but I didn't. I didn't know if he had done anything illegal yet, and I didn't want to be involved in some legal nightmare. But looking back, I should have. I should have called someone. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept imagining the boxes stacked floor to ceiling, all those women's stuff, and the way he smiled at them like they were trophies. I couldn't stop wondering how many there were. I couldn't eat or sleep properly. I deleted the app, blocked the number, changed my route to work, avoided going out at night. Everything reminded me of that storage unit. I told a few friends about it, but everyone just says I should run sooner. The truth is, I froze. I didn't know what to do. I've gone by that part of town a few times since, and I swear I can still see that half-open door, buzzing light, and all those boxes stacked in my head like a nightmare I can't unsee. Sometimes I catch myself thinking if I had stayed a second longer, would he have? I don't even want to finish that thought. It's been months, but I still get the occasional Tinder message from strangers who look normal, and I can't help but imagine storage units. I don't even use the app anymore. I deleted it completely. The only thing I took from that day is a weird, constant paranoia about people who seem too casual but really aren't. I've never told my parents because I didn't want them to worry, but even writing this down now, I feel my stomach tighten. That storage unit wasn't just a weird first date idea. It was a warning I barely escaped in time. Her profile said she was a therapist, which at first made me curious, not cautious. I liked the idea of talking to someone who seemed to actually understand people. She was smiling in her photos, relaxed, confident, the kind of smile that makes you feel like you can tell her anything. We messaged back and forth for a couple of days. Nothing weird, just small talk, jokes, and the kind of flirting that feels harmless. Eventually, she suggested we meet at this cafe she liked. I said sure. The cafe was tucked away in a side street of the city, quiet, filled with the smell of coffee beans roasting and pastries warming in the oven. It had mismatched chairs, wooden floors that creaked when you walked, and a few old books stacked on shelves against the walls. I got there early and grabbed a table near the window, looking outside at people walking by, trying to appear casual even though I felt that nervous excitement you get before a first date. When she arrived, she walked in, carrying a tote bag over one shoulder and a folder under her arm. Her presence was calm, deliberate, and I noticed she kept her eyes on me as she approached, scanning me in a way that felt oddly focused. We talked about normal things at first, music, movies, work. She listened, asked questions that were surprisingly specific, and I thought maybe that's just her therapist intuition. Then, after we'd ordered coffee, she reached into her tote bag and pulled out a printed folder. She handed it across the table to me without a word. I looked at it, confused. The front page had my full name and date of birth. Inside, neatly printed, was a psychological profile. The first few lines were harmless, general traits, but then I started reading and my stomach dropped. She had details in there I had never told anyone. Things about my childhood, my private thoughts, embarrassing moments. Things that were so specific it felt impossible that anyone could know. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. She watched me calmly, like she expected my reaction. The profile described patterns in my behavior, fears I had never shared with friends, the exact reasons I made certain decisions in my life. It included notes about memories I hadn't even processed fully myself, little mental notes I didn't realize I'd left floating somewhere in my mind. It was surreal, like reading someone else's diary written about me. Every line felt invasive, violating in a way that no ordinary conversation could achieve. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she had done research online, stalked my social media, but the details were far beyond what any of that could reveal. She had information that was intimate, personal, nuanced, Things I had never typed, never spoken, never left a trace of online. My heart started racing. Every sentence I read made my skin feel tight, like my thoughts weren't my own anymore. The more I read, the more I realized this wasn't a casual date. It was something calculated. She had prepared this before I ever met her, and somehow she knew things she shouldn't have known. She asked questions, seemingly normal ones about the profile, about my life, about my choices. Every answer I gave felt like she had predicted it, like she was checking each one against her notes. She didn't look shocked or surprised by anything I said. Instead, she scribbled on a notepad next to her, making marks I couldn't decipher. It felt like she was comparing me to some standard I didn't understand. The cafe around us faded from my awareness. I didn't notice other customers or the smell of espresso anymore. All I could focus on was the way she had mapped me, as if I were some puzzle she was solving in real time. Then the profile started including predictions, behaviors I might exhibit, decisions I might make, and even fears I hadn't confronted yet. It included personal failures, imagined regrets, and the words seemed to jump off the page with clarity. The more I read, the more I realized she had anticipated what I would say next, how I would react, what I would confess if prompted. My mind was spinning. It felt like every secret I had, every flaw, every thought I tried to hide, even from myself, was laid bare in black and white on that paper. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how to. Every instinct screamed to run, but I felt paralyzed, drawn into the profile as if it were magnetic. She suggested we go for a walk after coffee, and I agreed without thinking. Outside, the air was cold but crisp, sun low in the sky, streets quiet. We walked side by side, and she kept referring to the profile, pointing out patterns, small traits, subtle behaviors, all documented in the folder. I noticed people passing us, glancing, but none of them looked aware of the tension between us. None of them noticed the cold edge in her calm demeanor. Then she asked me about something personal that she couldn't possibly know. She described a moment from my teenage years in perfect detail, something I had told no one, not even close friends, about an incident at home. My stomach sank. I froze. She handed me the page that described it exactly as it happened, word for word, thought for thought. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like I was standing naked in public, except this was mental, a violation of my mind. We sat on a bench in a park after that, the folder still in my hands. She had notes about my gestures, the way I would fidget with my hands, the way I tilted my head, even my breathing patterns. It was meticulous, terrifyingly meticulous. She explained it as a way to understand me better, to help me confront myself, but the calm way she spoke made it clear it wasn't about therapy. It was about control, about observing, about knowing everything I thought I could hide. I didn't know what to say or do. I tried to laugh, make a joke, anything, but she didn't respond with amusement. She watched me, waited, letting the silence stretch like it was part of the exercise. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears. Every shadow of the trees seemed amplified. I realized she had orchestrated this, the date, the profile, the calm demeanor, the walk, all of it. She knew exactly how to draw me in, exactly how to make me complicit, exactly how to make me read my own secrets out loud under the guise of casual conversation. As the evening went on, the profile got more intense. She had predictions of how I might react in relationships, how I might fail, how I might betray trust, all of it laid out with precision. It was more than just knowledge. It was strategy. She had taken the person I was and exposed every flaw, every hidden thought, every fear, every hesitation. By the time we parted ways, I felt raw, like I had been dissected in a way that left nothing private. She smiled as if satisfied, handed me back the folder, and walked away. I went home, unable to stop thinking about it. Every detail in that folder haunted me. How she knew things I never wrote down, never told anyone, never even consciously remembered. It wasn't about the date anymore. It was about how someone could map a person so completely, so efficiently, that you felt like you didn't belong to yourself anymore. I couldn't sleep. Every noise, every creak in my apartment made me think she was watching, analyzing, maybe even preparing the next step. I'd never matched with anyone on Tinder again. The memory of that folder, the details, the predictions, and her calm, meticulous stare stayed with me. It wasn't just fear. It was a realization that someone had built a map of me, a detailed psychological profile with things I had never told, and I was powerless to take it back. Even now, weeks later, I think about her and that folder, the precision of her observations, the way she anticipated every reaction, and it unsettles me more than anything I've ever experienced. I met this guy on Tinder, let's call him Ryan, who seemed normal at first. Normal in the way that makes you let your guard down because nothing about him screamed danger. We decided to meet at this small jazz bar off a side street. Dim lights, velvet chairs, the kind of place that smells like old whiskey and dust. The first half hour was just small talk, laughing about dumb things, music, movies. Nothing felt off. Nothing felt alarming, just a nice evening. But then his phone started buzzing and he excused himself to check it. He showed me the screen and I froze. The contact name said Future Me. He laughed nervously, told me it was some weird app or a prank, but then he opened the first message. It read exactly what he was about to say before he said it, down to his awkward pauses and the way he gestured with his hands. At first, it was funny, like a gimmick. He typed something, and the phone buzzed instantly, predicting his words with frightening accuracy. I thought maybe it was some kind of weird predictive texting thing, an AI, some tech joke. The first few minutes were amusing, actually. But then I realized it wasn't just what he was saying. Every time I moved, every little gesture I made, the phone predicted it. I raised my hand to fix my hair, and the text popped up 5 seconds before I did it. I laughed nervously, thinking it was a coincidence, maybe some bizarre algorithm. But my stomach started sinking. It was too exact, too personal. Every little twitch, every low glance, it was anticipating me, predicting me perfectly. Then the tone of the messages changed. One text popped up while I was mid-sentence. It didn't predict what I was saying. It predicted what would happen next. It said, "You will spill your drink in 2 minutes." I froze and tried to act casual, but as if confirming it, my elbow bumped the glass and liquid sloshed onto the table. The phone buzzed again. Another message. "You will get up to go to the bathroom in 5 minutes." I didn't want to believe it, but I went to the bathroom, feeling my chest tighten, and the message appeared as I opened the door, just like it said. From that point on, everything escalated. The text started being more detailed, predicting small accidents and events, the way I would cough, the way I would cross my legs. It was subtle at first, like a parlor trick, but then the content became darker. One message appeared as I walked back to the table. "You will trip on the last step of the stairwell, your ankle twisting painfully." I froze halfway down the stairs, heart hammering. I avoided the trip, but the phone buzzed again. "You will regret avoiding it." Ryan looked at me like I was losing it, but I could see he was scared too. He was reading the messages in real time, every word predicting exactly what he did, then shifting to me. And then it changed. The next text wasn't predicting small accidents. It said, "You will die in this city in 3 days alone, suffocated in your apartment." My stomach dropped, and I laughed nervously, trying to convince myself it was a joke, some prank, or a weird app glitch. But the way the words appeared on the screen, and the timing, made it impossible to ignore. The rest of the night was surreal. Every time I spoke, the phone buzzed. Every sentence I started was finished before it came out of my mouth. The messages kept escalating. First predicting arguments I would have, then minor injuries, then specific ways I might die, where I would be, even who would be around. Ryan tried to explain, suggesting maybe someone was playing a joke from the App Store or some kind of creepy AI experiment, but the fear in his eyes told me he didn't have answers either. The bar seemed normal to everyone else. Jazz music playing, waiters moving around, but we were trapped in a private horror that no one else noticed. We left the bar, walked through the empty streets at night, hoping the fresh air would help. The phone buzzed again. "You will fall while crossing the street, traffic coming too fast." I stopped dead in my tracks, staring at the empty road, hearing my own heartbeat. A car passed slowly, but the text didn't disappear. It stayed, lingering, predicting not just movements, but the fear itself. Every shadow, every flicker of neon seemed amplified. I felt like we were being watched, like the city itself was participating. Ryan suggested we go to his apartment, thinking we could figure it out there. But as soon as we walked in, the phone predicted my every movement before I even thought about them. It told me where I would sit, how I would fidget, even predicting the exact words I would say if I tried to ask about the texts. The phone buzzed again with the next message. You will be dead here in 2 days, alone, lights flickering, cold air suffocating you. My hands froze. The fear wasn't just that someone knew. It was that the phone was somehow living ahead of me, anticipating the way I existed. Every breath felt calculated, every motion logged, every thought somehow readable. The next day, I tried to ignore it, went about normal things. Grocery store, coffee shop, walking the dog. Everywhere the phone buzzed. It predicted every purchase, every word to the cashier, even what I would glance at in the produce section. And then it started inserting impossible things, things that hadn't happened yet, things that made no sense. Messages about falling from rooftops, suffocating under furniture, even drowning in bathtubs. Each prediction more vivid than the last, and each one timed perfectly to moments I didn't even anticipate. I tried deleting the app, throwing the phone in the sink, leaving it in the trash, even smashing it. Nothing worked. It always reappeared, glowing, buzzing with the next prediction. Ryan stopped answering calls, stopped responding to messages like he realized he couldn't do anything to stop it either. The text became the soundtrack of my life. I started planning everything according to what they said, moving with the predictions, hoping to avoid the death scenarios. But the more I tried to avoid them, the more specific and accurate the text became. It was like the phone, or whatever entity was controlling it, knew not just my movements, but my intentions. By the third day, I was exhausted. I didn't leave the apartment except for necessities, didn't speak to anyone, didn't touch anything not required. And the texts changed again. No longer just predicting movements or accidents, but showing exact scenarios of my death. One message described me tripping on a rug, hitting my head, the foam glowing in the corner of the room as the life left me. Another described my apartment catching fire while I slept, the smell of smoke thick in the room. Each prediction was detailed, complete with sound, light, and timing. I don't know what made me decide to stay. I could have run, I could have left the city, but the phone predicted that too. The moment I thought about leaving, another message appeared. You will fail to leave. Every path blocked, every street impossible. Stay here. It was as if I was trapped inside some loop that didn't exist until the phone made it real. The messages weren't just text. They were instructions, warnings, prophecies, and threats all in one. I spent the night pacing, checking doors, windows, listening to every creak of the building. Every time I thought I saw a shadow, the phone buzzed, describing exactly what I was seeing before I could react. At 3 a.m., a new message appeared. You will survive this night, but only until the fourth sunrise. Avoid sleep. I couldn't. Exhaustion went over. I slept. When I woke, the phone was gone from my nightstand. I thought maybe I dreamed the entire thing. But then a new text appeared on a tablet I had ignored for years. Same sender, future me, saying warning, you slept. Now the countdown begins. I don't know how long this went on. Each day felt like a week. The predictions became more and more invasive, describing not just death, but the sensations leading up to it, smells, feelings, sounds, even emotional panic. It was impossible to live normally. Every phone, every device I touched, it appeared there, glowing with the next scenario. No one else could see it. I realized I was completely alone in this, trapped inside a prediction of my own existence. The last message I got before I stopped checking any devices described exactly how I would die. It was a simple message. You will collapse in the kitchen alone, no one around to help, heart-stopping, eyes fixed on the glowing screen predicting your last breath. I sat there staring at the wall, trying to convince myself it was impossible, but deep down I knew. The timing, the accuracy, the terror of the predictions left no room for denial. I never opened a phone again after that. I don't know if it was some app, some entity, or a curse, but I lived with the memory of the texts, the way they knew me, anticipated me, and decided my fate. I never thought a Tinder date could feel like a horror movie, but here we are. It started with a girl, let's call her Lexi, who matched with me out of nowhere. Her profile was full of travel photos, beaches, mountains, all that stuff, and she seemed chill, funny in her messages, nothing off, or so I thought. She suggested a double date, which I was hesitant about, but then she said the other guy was a friend and that it would be fun. I agreed because I figured, whatever, maybe it's a safe way to meet someone new. We picked this diner on the edge of town, neon lights buzzing, the kind of place where the stools wobble, and the jukebox is stuck on 80s songs. I got there early, sat at a corner booth, ordered a soda just to look casual, and we waited. When Lexi came in, she was laughing, dragging the other guy behind her. And the second I looked at him, I froze. It was me. Same height, same build, same haircut, same stupid crooked smile that I have when I'm trying to hide nervousness. My stomach flipped. I kept thinking maybe it was some weird coincidence, but as they sat down, I realized every detail lined up. Same voice pitch, same laugh, even the way he slouched. At first, I thought it was a prank. Maybe Lexi's friend had some twin or some cosplay thing. But the way she smiled at both of us, leaned in, and said nothing about it made the room feel smaller, tighter. She ordered for all of us, chatting like nothing was weird, but I couldn't focus on what she was saying. All I could do was look at the guy across from me and feel like I was staring into a mirror of my own life, a version of myself that shouldn't exist outside my own head. It was surreal. We ate in this awkward silence that she somehow ignored. She kept glancing between us, and it wasn't normal glances. It was calculating, like she was measuring reactions, testing us. The diner felt empty even though there were other people, and the buzz of the neon light above made my teeth feel cold. Every bite of my sandwich tasted metallic. I tried to act normal, laugh at her jokes, but I couldn't stop staring at the other me, the fake me sitting opposite, nodding and smiling exactly how I would. Then she said she had a challenge. I thought it was a joke, some dumb Tinder game, right? But the way she described it, my blood ran cold. She said she wanted to see which one of us would survive, and she didn't explain what that meant. Just a smirk, tapping her nails on the table, like she already knew the answer. My stomach twisted. I started scanning the diner, looking for cameras or hidden phones. Nothing. No one else seemed to notice her tone. She was treating it like a casual date, like this was the most normal thing in the world. She got us to leave the diner, said she knew a place that was perfect for the challenge. We walked, both me and my double side by side, her in the middle, holding our hands at different times. It was a long trek through a part of the city I didn't know well, alleys that smelled like trash and damp concrete, streets lined with flickering lamps that gave everything a sickly yellow glow. Every so often, she'd stop, turn, and smile, and the other me would smile back in sync. It was impossible not to notice. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. Finally, we arrived at an abandoned warehouse near the train tracks. It was huge, windows boarded, rust climbing the metal walls, the kind of place that screams bad decisions. She pushed the door open and let us inside. The air was thick with dust and the smell of old oil. I could barely see through the gloom, and the echo of our footsteps made it feel like we were the only three people in the world. She told us to wait in the center, that the rules would be simple. The one who proves themselves wins. I asked myself wins what, survives how, but she didn't answer. Then the other me stepped forward, same way I would, same nervous tension in his shoulders. I realized I was mirroring him without even trying, stepping forward in sync. That's when I noticed small details she must have known about both of us. She mentioned things about my childhood, habits I've never told anyone, things like how I always tap my fingers when I'm nervous, how I start humming when I'm thinking. The other me flinched at the same things. It wasn't just that she had matched with us both. It was like she knew us, really knew us, like she had studied us, and the thought made my skin crawl. She started giving us challenges, little tests that seemed harmless at first, standing on one foot while balancing a coin, reciting tongue twisters, remembering random numbers. But then it got weirder. She asked questions about our fears, memories, secrets. The second we answered wrong, she laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was like the kind of laugh someone makes when they got the upper hand. The warehouse shadows stretched across the walls, twisting our reflections so I couldn't tell where I ended and the other me began. She kept alternating between us, giving the challenges and measuring reactions. She would pause between questions, tilt her head, scribble something on her phone, muttering notes. I realized she was keeping score in a way that didn't make sense, like she was cataloging weaknesses. Every failure felt heavier, like some unseen weight pressing against my chest. The other me would succeed at some tasks, then fail at others, and each time she reacted the same way, like she already knew who should falter next. I started to notice the patterns. It wasn't about the challenges themselves. It was about breaking us down, testing how far we would bend before she decided something. I tried to get out. I backed toward the door once, my hands raised, pretending to stretch, but she just tilted her head and smiled. She asked us to continue. My pulse was insane. It was like being trapped in a puzzle that I couldn't solve, staring at a reflection of myself who seemed equally scared and confused. The warehouse smelled worse the longer we stayed, like metal and dust and fear all mixed together. I could hear the train in the distance, the rhythm of it echoing through the walls, but it didn't help. After hours, the challenges turned physical. Nothing extreme, but pushing, shoving, sprinting through the warehouse corridors, dodging hanging chains and barrels she set up. It was like a weird obstacle course, but twisted in a way that felt dangerous. She watched every move, noting mistakes, correcting us in ways that made my muscles ache and my head spin. I couldn't tell if the other me was real or some projection, some trick of my mind, but he was hurting just like me, breathing hard, sweating, struggling to keep up. And she never tired, never faltered, always calm, always recording, always smiling like she had already won before we started. Toward the end, she finally declared it was time for the final test. She had us stand in a circle, lights flickering above the air electric. She told us the one who hesitated loses. Simple, right, but impossible. I could feel my heart in my throat, every instinct screaming to move, to fight, to do anything but stand there. The other me did the same. We mirrored each other perfectly, eyes locked on her. She started counting down. 1, 2, 3. At 3, she snapped her fingers, and my mind went blank for a second. When I blinked, the other me was gone. Vanished. I looked around. No sign of him, no indication he had left, or was pushed or ran. Just empty space, and her smiling at me like she was pleased. I stumbled out of the warehouse, cold air hitting my face, lungs burning. I didn't ask questions, didn't wait to process. I just ran. The streets were empty, dark, and silent except for distant sirens and the hum of neon signs. I didn't look back. The image of the other me disappearing and her calm smile is burned into my brain. It wasn't about dating or flirting. It was some game, some cruel experiment she set up. The double date wasn't just a double date. It was a setup, a trap, and the challenge wasn't just a challenge. It was a way to scare the hell out of both of us. One survived, one disappeared, and I am not sure what exactly happened to him. I haven't been on Tinder since. I don't know how she found us, how she knew our habits, our quirks, or how she even got a copy of my face in human form across the table. The warehouse is still there, abandoned and dangerous, and sometimes I drive by it just to see if the lights flicker, if the door moves, if maybe she's still out there setting up the next round. The image of that other me, breathing, sweating, scared, vanishing like he was never there, is something I can't unsee. So this started like any stupid Tinder story you hear about, but way worse. I meshed with this guy, let's call him Direct, even though that's probably not his real name. His profile was like a normal mix of dumb selfies and gym pics, and one of those lover of adventures captions. I remember thinking he seemed harmless, which looking back was the first mistake. We started talking late at night, like 2 a.m., and his messages were weirdly smooth, but also kind of pushy. I told myself it was just flirting. Anyway, we decided to meet at this small coffee place downtown, the kind that always smells like birch sugar and espresso, the one with the old couches that smell faintly of mildew. I got there first, sat in the corner, scrolling through my phone, pretending to look busy while trying to psych myself up for the date. When he came in, he had that kind of smile that looks normal until you realize it never reaches his eyes, and right away I noticed he wasn't wearing a coat even though it was freezing. Just jeans, sneakers, and a hoodie zipped up halfway. He waved, I waved back, and we started talking like nothing unusual, but the vibe was off. Like I couldn't put my finger on it, but my gut started tightening after 5 minutes. He was one of those people who talks like he's telling a story about himself in a movie, jumping from one thing to another, and I just nodded along, trying to get a read. The conversation turned to dumb stuff, the kind of topics you think are safe: music, movies, and eventually kissing. He asked me if I'd ever thought about rating someone's kissing skills. I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but he wasn't joking. He wanted me to rate him. Then he started explaining how he had this note app, where he kept a list titled "Reasons You'll Regret This." I tried to laugh it off, telling him he was weird, but the way he said it, it wasn't a joke. It was like he was proud. So we left the coffee place and walked around the block. Just a dumb, casual stroll. The street's quiet because it was like 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. He suggested we stop at this tiny park nearby, the kind with a broken swing set and one of those weird spinning metal rides that squeaks like it's about to fall apart. He told me it was romantic, or at least that's what he called it. I should have left right there, but curiosity and stupidity got the better of me. We sat on a bench, and he leaned in. He kissed me once, and then immediately pulled back, holding his phone in front of him, waiting. He asked me to rate it. I gave him a 7 because honestly it was sloppy. He didn't like that. He opened the notes app, scrolled to a new entry, and typed something. He didn't show me the screen, but I could see the words "Reasons You'll Regret This" at the top. My stomach sank. He kissed me again, and this time I tried to make it a 10, just to get him to stop, but it was impossible. Every time I gave anything less than a 10, he typed something into the app, muttering under his breath about how people don't know what they want. It got worse when he started leaning in for these little surprise kisses, each one demanding a rating immediately. I tried to step back, but he held my arm lightly and whispered about how important honesty was. After maybe 10 minutes of this, I realized the park was empty. No one walking by, no cars. The streetlights were flickering, and I had this stupid creeping sense of panic I couldn't explain. The app thing wasn't just weird anymore, it was threatening. He kept glancing at it like a scoreboard, smiling when he liked my rating, frowning if I hesitated. I tried to make a joke about how rating kissing is dumb, hoping to throw him off, but he just stared at me like he was calculating something. Then he leaned closer again, and I could see his phone screen reflected in the metal bench slats. He was already typing a new line, and the words "Reasons You'll Regret This" glared at me. I froze. He suggested we go to his place nearby to continue the rating properly. I wanted to say no, but I didn't have a good excuse and didn't want to make a scene in an empty park. So we walked to his apartment, which was on the 3rd floor of this building that looked abandoned at first glance. The hallway smelled like damp carpet and something metallic. He fumbled with his keys, joking, but I didn't laugh. The place was small, messy, the kind of studio that looks like someone moved in yesterday and never unpacked. He had posters all over the walls, but none of them were normal. They were close-up shots of mouths and eyes, some photos that made my stomach twist. The next hour was a blur of him kissing me and me rating him. Every time less than 10, he would jot something into the notes app. I started noticing patterns. He didn't just write complaints about my rating. He wrote sentences about me personally, things I had said during the night, even little habits I hadn't realized he noticed. It was like he was collecting a profile. I remember him typing while sitting cross-legged on the floor, phone balanced on his knees, muttering phrases that sounded like threats if I didn't cooperate. I was frozen half on the couch, half on the floor, just waiting for him to finish typing. Somewhere around the 3rd round, I tried to stand up and say we should stop, but he put his hand on my shoulder and asked for the rating for that kiss. My voice was shaky. I whispered 8, he typed. I saw the app blink with new words, the cursor moving across the screen faster than a normal person could type. I didn't dare ask what he wrote. The feeling of being trapped in a little studio with a guy who judged my kisses like it was life or death was overwhelming. I started calculating all my exits, thinking about throwing him off balance by pretending to like a kiss, but he caught every hesitation. I don't know how many times this went on, but eventually I just froze completely. He was leaning back, smiling, phone in hand, reading his list out loud. It was like he had a script, and I was the character who had to play along. I told him I needed water, just to leave, and he didn't argue. When I came back, he was still typing. I grabbed my bag and tried to sneak out, thinking he wouldn't notice, but the app was open and I caught the edge of the title, still glowing. Reasons You'll Regret This. I shoved my bag under my arm and walked out, my legs shaking. The stairwell smelled worse outside his door. I don't know why I didn't just run straight to the street, but I walked down like a zombie, listening for him behind me. Nothing. I got outside and the cold hit my face like it was trying to slap some sense back into me. I didn't look back until I got 2 blocks away. The building looked normal, empty, normal lights on, like nothing happened. I tried to convince myself I imagined it, that it was just a weird kink, some bizarre obsession with ratings. But the memory of that phone, the app, the notes, the way he typed my every hesitation into some list, it's burned in my head. I blocked him everywhere, deleted the chat, reported him, whatever that's worth. But the worst part is I keep thinking about what he wrote in that app. Did it have my full name? My address? Did he write plans? The thought of it makes me sweat in the middle of the night sometimes. I never went on Tinder again. I don't know why I agreed to meet him, why I didn't run at the first weird smile. All I know is the park, the bench, the studio, and the glowing title of that note app is stuck in my head like it's mocking me. I told a friend once about it, trying to laugh. They went pale and told me to never meet someone like that again. That night didn't end with police or screaming or even obvious threat, but it ended with me realizing how someone can make something as stupid as kissing into a system of control. The app was the worst part. The thing he held in his hand like it was a weapon, typing my worth and my hesitation, judging everything I did. I don't know what he would have done if I refused to rate him or ran, but thinking about it makes me not want to be near anyone I don't know ever again. The next week I walked past the coffee place. Same bird sugar smell, same old couches, but I didn't go in. I didn't want to see him again or anyone like him. Sometimes late at night, I still imagine the flicker of his phone, the words glowing, typing my name. It's a weird kind of fear that doesn't go away because there's no punchline. There's no moment where you can say, yeah, that was terrifying, but I got away. I got away, yes, but I can't stop seeing that app, the title, the way it blinked at me every time I gave a number less than 10. I didn't grow up thinking my family was mysterious. They were loud, predictable, the kind of people who tell the same stories every holiday and never change the seating arrangement. My childhood home was the opposite of secretive. Everyone knew where everything was. That's why what happened didn't feel scary at first. It felt wrong in a quieter way, like someone had moved furniture in my head, and I couldn't tell which piece. I meshed with her on a random night when I was half watching TV and half scrolling without really seeing anything. Her profile had a calm energy. Not flashy, not overly curated. She looked like someone I wouldn't gone to school with. The messages were easy. No awkward gaps, no forced jokes. Just steady conversation that felt grounded. We met at a casual place near my apartment. Nothing special. I remember thinking it was nice to meet someone who didn't immediately try to turn everything into a performance. She listened closely. Maybe too closely, but I didn't clock that right away. About 10 minutes in, she started asking questions about my family. Not the usual stuff. Not how many siblings or where they live. She asked about routines. Who cooked dinner when I was a kid? Which parent worked later hours? What time we usually ate? What room everyone sat in? Whether my dad still used the same chair. I laughed and answered because it felt harmless. People ask about family. It's normal. But the questions kept getting more specific. She asked about the backyard, the old tree near the fence, the way the front door sticks when it rains. She asked about things I hadn't thought about in years. I asked how she knew all that stuff mattered. She smiled and said families tell you who someone really is. That line stuck with me. As the night went on, the questions got stranger. She asked about my mom's cooking, which dishes she made for special occasions, which ones she never got right. She asked what time my parents usually ate dinner now. Not when I was a kid. Now. I remember feeling a slight tightening in my chest. Not panic, just confusion. I told myself maybe I had mentioned it earlier. Maybe she was good at reading people. After we left, she hugged me like she had known me longer than a couple hours. I walked home feeling unsettled but unable to explain why. Nothing bad had happened. Everything was polite. I went to sleep thinking I was overthinking it. The next day, my mom texted me. She said they were having a small dinner that night. Nothing fancy. Just family and someone special. She said I should come if I could. That alone wasn't weird. My parents do last-minute dinners all the time. What made me pause was the phrase someone special. They usually say a name, or say family only. This felt vague. I replied that I would try to make it. On the drive there, I couldn't shake a feeling that I was forgetting something important. Like walking into a room and knowing you left the stove on somewhere else. I told myself I was just tired. When I pulled up to the house, everything looked the same. Same porch light, same wind chimes, same car in the driveway. I walked up the steps and opened the door without knocking like I always do. The smell of food hit me first, then the sound of voices. Then I stepped into the dining room. She was sitting at the table, not standing awkwardly, not about to leave, sitting comfortably, plate in front of her, laughing at something my dad had just done. She looked relaxed, familiar, like she belonged there. My parents didn't react to me right away. They were too busy with her. My mom was refilling her glass. My dad was mid-story. The chair I usually sit in was pushed in. My brain stalled. I stood there too long before anyone noticed. When they did, the room shifted. Not dramatically, just a brief pause. My mom looked surprised, not happy surprised, confused surprised. She asked what I was doing there. That question landed wrong. I told her I got the text. I told her I thought I was invited. I told her I had just been on a date with a girl sitting at the table. My parents exchanged a look. Not concern, not shock, annoyance. They told me they had invited her. Not me. They said she reached out earlier in the week, said she wanted to surprise me, said she wanted to meet them properly, said she had been so thoughtful and polite, said it felt rude not to invite her over for dinner. They said she told them everything. My stomach dropped. I looked at her. She smiled softly, like this was all part of a plan that was unfolding exactly right. She didn't look embarrassed or caught. She looked settled. My mom said they assumed I knew. She said she thought it was sweet. She said the girl knew things even I had forgotten. She said it felt like talking to family. I felt like I was standing outside my own body, watching a scene that didn't include me anymore. I asked how she got their number. My dad said she found it online. Old directory listing. Nothing hard to track down. He said people do that stuff all the time now. I asked how long they had been talking. My mom said weeks. Weeks. I hadn't even matched with her until recently. My heart started pounding. My ears rang. The room felt too bright. I told them she and I had only met once. I told them the question she asked. I told them I didn't know she was coming. They looked at me like I was being dramatic, like I was jealous or rude. My mom said I always overthink things. My dad said I should be grateful someone cared enough to make an effort. The girl finally stood up. She came toward me slowly, like she didn't want to rush the moment. She said something about wanting to meet the people who made me. She said something about fitting in. I backed away. I told my parents I was leaving. My mom looked offended. My dad looked disappointed. Neither of them looked worried. I walked out without saying goodbye. I sat in my car for a long time with the engine off. My hands were shaking. My phone buzzed with a message from her that I didn't open. On the drive home, I kept replaying everything. The questions, the details, the timing. How she knew things I never told anyone. How comfortable she was in a house that still feels like mine even though I don't live there anymore. Later that night, my mom called. She asked why I had been so cold. She said the girl was upset. She said she thought we were serious. She said they liked her a lot. She said it was nice to finally see me bring someone home. I told her to stop talking to the girl. There was a pause. She said they couldn't. She said they had already made plans. She said the girl was coming over again next week. I hung up. I drove back to my apartment and sat on the floor, trying to breathe. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Another missed call. I blocked her. The next morning, my dad texted me. He asked if I was still upset. He said the girl had dropped off a casserole. He said it was my favorite. He said she remembered from something I told her. I hadn't told her that. I didn't go back to my parents' house for a while after that. When I did, the chair at the table was still pushed in. The food tasted familiar in a way that made me uncomfortable. They stopped mentioning her eventually, or maybe they didn't and I just stopped asking. Sometimes I wonder if she still goes there, if she still sits in that chair, if she still answers questions about my childhood like they're her own memories. The worst part is knowing how easily she fit, how quickly my place was taken without anyone noticing it was gone. I woke up with that gross, heavy head feeling you get when sleep doesn't do its job. Not hungover exactly, just foggy, like my brain was still buffering. The room felt off before I even opened my eyes. Too quiet, too still. The kind of quiet that makes you check if something is missing. I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to remember the night before in the right order, and that's when I realized the other side of the bed was empty. I wasn't surprised. She said she had work early, or maybe she said something like that. The details were already fuzzy. I rolled onto my side and saw the dent in the pillow where her head had been, already puffing back into shape. The sheets smelled like someone else. Not perfume, just that warm human smell that lingers after someone leaves. I told myself it was normal. Casual night. No expectations. That was the whole point. I got up, padded to the kitchen, and poured cereal into a bowl without checking if I had milk. I did, barely. Enough to get by. My phone was on the counter where I always leave it. Screen dark. No notifications lighting it up. I picked it up and unlocked it, half expecting a message saying she got home safe or something equally forgettable. Instead, Tinder opened itself. I didn't even remember opening it. Maybe muscle memory. Maybe habit. The app refreshed, the loading circle spun, and then her profile appeared. Again. Same name, same age, same distance, but the photos were different. I stared at the screen, spoon frozen halfway to my mouth. The first photo loaded slowly, like it wanted me to have time to understand what I was looking at. It was my living room. Not a stock living room. Not something similar. Mine. The crooked lamp. The coffee table with the chipped corner. The poster I never hung straight. The angle was from near the doorway, tilted slightly down. My heart started beating faster. I scrolled. The second photo was my couch. My couch with a blanket folded the wrong way because I always forget how it's supposed to go. There was a shadow on the cushion that looked like someone standing just out of frame. The third photo was worse. It was my bedroom. The angle was low, like the phone had been held close to the mattress. The sheets were rumpled. My wall was in the background, the small crack near the window clearly visible. I could see my own arm in the corner of the frame, bare and slack, resting on the bed. I dropped the spoon. Milk splashed onto the counter and dripped onto the floor, but I didn't notice right away. My ears were ringing. My mouth felt dry. I scrolled back up, then down again, like maybe my brain would catch up and explain it. The caption under the photos was light and casual. Something about loving cozy mornings and quiet spaces. It made my skin crawl. I checked the timestamp on the images. Uploaded recently, hours ago, after she left. After I was asleep. I locked the app and reopened it. Same thing. Refreshed. Still there. Distance updated less than a mile. Basically and on top of me. I walked through the apartment slowly, like I expected to see someone still hiding. Every corner felt wrong. The bathroom door was closed. I always leave it open. The window in the bedroom was unlocked. I never unlock it. I checked my front door. Locked. Deadbolt in place. No sign of damage. Nothing obvious missing. My laptop was where I left it. My wallet untouched. Everything looked normal in that fake way that makes you feel crazy for questioning it. I sat back down on the bed and tried to remember her better. We matched 2 nights earlier. Her profile was simple, not overly done. A few photos, mostly selfies, one group shot. She had a smile that looked practiced but not fake. Messages were easy. Not flirty in an aggressive way. Just comfortable, like talking to someone you already knew a little. We met at a bar near my place. I suggested it because I didn't want to travel. She showed up on time. We talked, laughed. Nothing stood out. That's what scared me the most later. There was no moment where alarms went off. No weird comments. No intense questions. Nothing that felt like a setup. We came back to my apartment late. I remember unlocking the door. Remember tossing my keys into the bowl by the shelf. Remember offering water. Remember feeling tired but relaxed. After that, the memories blur. Not blackout blur, just soft edges. I remember falling asleep faster than I usually do. I remember rolling over once and thinking she was still there. I did not remember her taking photos. I opened the app again and looked closer. The photos weren't rushed. They were framed, thought out. Whoever took them moved around quietly, took their time, noticed details, knew what looked good. One of the photos showed my bookshelf, not just a shelf, but a specific angle that hid the clutter and focused on the few things that look intentional. I didn't even take photos like that. I went to her profile settings. No social links, no last name, nothing to track. I tried to report it, but the app glitched and refreshed again, pushing her card back to the top. I got a match notification. With her, my stomach flipped. The message preview showed nothing because I didn't open it. I couldn't. The idea of seeing text from someone who had been standing over me while I slept made my chest tighten. I unmatched her. The profile vanished. For about 10 seconds, I felt relief. Then the app refreshed again. She was back. New profile, slightly different name, same photos, plus one more. The new one was taken from my kitchen. Early morning light coming through the window. My cereal bowl on the counter. The milk spill still visible on the floor. That photo did me in. I ran to the door and checked the lock again, hands shaking. I checked the hallway through the door viewer even though I hate doing that. Empty. Quiet. Same old carpet. Same flickering light. I unplugged my router, turned off my phone, sat on the couch with my back against the wall, trying to slow my breathing. I stayed like that for hours. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were notifications stacked up. Messages from friends. Work emails. Nothing from Tinder. I didn't open the app again that day. The next morning, I woke up to a notification anyway. New like. I opened it before I could stop myself. Different woman. Different name. Different photos. Except the background. My bathroom mirror. My hallway. My front door. The bio was short. Casual. Something about loving quiet nights and getting to know people slowly. I felt dizzy. My legs went weak. I sat down hard on the floor. I checked the photo details. All taken overnight, all from inside my apartment. Different angles, different rooms. Same careful framing. I searched the app for my address. Nothing. I searched for my name. Nothing. It was like I wasn't the target. My space was. I left that day, packed a bag, and stayed with a friend across town. I didn't tell him everything. Just that I needed a break. I turned off my location, changed passwords, deleted apps. When I came back a week later, the apartment felt smaller, tighter, like the walls had leaned in while I was gone. I slept with the lights on. I covered my camera. I checked corners I had never looked at before. I found nothing. No hidden devices, no signs of entry, no explanation that made sense. The profile stopped appearing after a while, or maybe I stopped looking. Sometimes I still wake up and feel like someone just left the room. Sometimes I open my phone and hesitate before unlocking it, afraid of what might be waiting there. The worst part is knowing how easily it happened. No force, no noise, no warning. Just someone moving through my live like they already belonged there. I moved into this new apartment on the 5th floor thinking a change of scenery would help me forget about all the weird stuff I'd read on dating apps. Horror stories, screenshots, late night Reddit threads I told myself not to open but always did. I wanted something new, something clean. The building was old, with peeling paint in the hallway and a staircase that smelled faintly like dust and damp wood. But the rent was cheap, $900 a month, and the windows were huge. Floor-to-ceiling glass in the living room, the kind that made the space feel bigger than it was. At night, the city stretched out beneath me, glowing and alive like it was keeping me company. I didn't think much of it at first. I loved how the light poured in during the afternoon, how I could sit on the couch and watch traffic crawl below. For the first few weeks, I slept better than I had in months. That was before I met him on Tinder. He seemed normal, really normal. That was the part that stuck with me later, the part that made everything worse. No weird bio, no cryptic jokes, no red flags I could screenshot and show my friends. Just a few photos, casual smile, normal job, normal interests. Someone I could meet without overthinking. I matched with him late one night, swiping out of boredom, half watching something dumb on TV. When we started texting, it felt easy. No pressure, no oversharing. He didn't ask anything invasive. When he suggested meeting at a small bar near my apartment, I agreed without hesitation. The first night was fine. Too fine. We had a drink, talked about work, music, nothing personal, nothing heavy. I liked that he didn't dig. When the bar started emptying out, he offered to walk me back. I hesitated for half a second, just enough to notice it. But the street was quiet, familiar, and only a few blocks away. I told myself I was being paranoid. As we walked, I noticed him looking up. Not casually, not scanning the buildings the way people do when they're bored, but focused. His eyes kept returning to the same place. My windows, the ones where the living room light spilled out into the dark. I laughed it off, made a joke about having a good view. He smiled, nodded, but didn't say anything. Every time we passed another building, he slowed just a bit, glanced up again, then looked away when he noticed me watching. By the time we reached the front door, my stomach felt tight. I blamed the alcohol. I waved goodbye, went inside, locked the door, and stood there longer than necessary listening. I didn't hear footsteps walking away, but eventually I told myself he'd gone. Later that night, I turned off the TV and stood by the window, enjoying the quiet. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was just someone lingering on the sidewalk, maybe on their phone. Then my eyes adjusted. He wasn't moving. He was standing directly below my window, head tilted back, staring straight up. Not scanning, not distracted, just looking at my apartment. I stepped back, heart pounding. When I looked again, he was still there. I called the police. They asked questions, took notes, but their tone made it clear there was nothing they could do. No threats, no weapon, just a guy standing on a public sidewalk. By the time they arrived, he was gone. After that, I kept the curtains closed. All the time. Even during the day. The apartment felt smaller without the light, but at least I didn't have to see him. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. At night, when the room was dark, I started noticing him in the reflection anyway. Not clearly, just a shape at first. A suggestion of a figure where the glass caught the streetlight. I told myself it was exhaustion, stress, my brain filling in gaps. But it kept happening. Same time every night. Same corner of the window. Sometimes closer than before, larger, like he was pressing against the glass from the other side. I tried to message him. I kept it calm, normal, asking him to leave me alone. The messages never delivered. His profile vanished. No name. No history, like he never existed. The reflections didn't stop. I'd see him while cooking just a shoulder behind me in the microwave door. While brushing my teeth, his face hovering where my own should be. Always just out of focus. Always watching. Sometimes his head tilted too far to one side, neck bent at an angle that made my skin crawl. Sometimes he didn't blink. One night, I noticed movement in the living room window and spun around, heart in my throat. Nothing. I laughed shakily at myself and went back to my laptop. 5 minutes later, I caught the reflection in the kitchen window. He wasn't outside. He was standing behind me in the doorway. I turned so fast, I nearly fell. The room was empty. Silent. The city outside hadn't changed. I didn't sleep at all that night. After that, I covered everything. Mirrors, windows, shiny appliances. I draped towels over the TV, taped paper over picture frames, even avoided my phone screen unless I had to. But reflections were everywhere. In spoons, in dark screens, in polished wood. I moved furniture to block the windows. I spent as little time in the apartment as possible. Still, the weight of being watched followed me, like he was there, just out of sight, waiting for me to look. I left a note in the lobby asking neighbors to call me if they saw anyone hanging around. No one did. No one had noticed anything strange. I finally realized it wouldn't matter if I moved. He wasn't on the street. He was wherever I could see. Now, as the sun sets and the light hits the glass just right, I don't look anymore. I keep my eyes down, because I've learned something worse than being watched. Sometimes when I catch my reflection by accident, he's smiling. And sometimes I'm smiling back. I was on a business trip in a small city I had never been to before, the kind of place that feels unfamiliar no matter how many times you check the map. Everything looked slightly off, like the streets were laid out wrong or the buildings were too quiet for a weekday. The hotel was nothing fancy, just cheap and clean, $120 a night, which was exactly what my company would approve without questions. The lobby smelled faintly like cleaning solution and old carpet, and the lights were just a little too dim for midday. The receptionist handed me the key card and smiled a little too much, not creepy exactly, just like she was holding the smile longer than necessary. I didn't think about it at the time. I took the elevator up, listening to the hum and watching the floor numbers tick by, and when I reached my room, everything seemed normal. I swiped the card, the lights flicked on, and I felt that usual relief of being alone after travel. I dropped my bag on the bed, checked the bathroom out of habit, flushed the toilet, ran the sink, nothing weird. I started unpacking, folding clothes, laying things out. That's when I read the Tinder notification. I had matched with a guy earlier that day while waiting at the airport. Someone who seemed chill, normal, just in town for work like me. His messages were casual, easy, nothing that raised alarms. I decided to meet him at the hotel bar later that night, thinking it would be safe since I wouldn't even have to leave the building. The bar was nearly empty when I went down, just a few people scattered across stools and tables, nursing drinks and staring at their phones. It was the kind of place where you could sit for hours and no one would remember your face. The lighting was low and warm, and the TV over the bar was muted. He was already there, leaning against the counter, smiling like he'd been waiting but not impatient. He looked like his photos, which immediately made me relax. We talked for a while, laughed about city traffic, complained about hotel food, made jokes about work trips blurring together. Nothing personal, nothing deep. It felt easy, like a normal night that would matter later. After a drink or two, he suggested we check out the rooftop view. I hesitated for maybe half a second, then said sure. The elevator ride up was quiet except for the soft music playing overhead. I noticed him glancing at my reflection in the elevator mirrors a few times, but I laughed it off in my head, thinking it was normal curiosity or just boredom during the ride. When the doors opened onto the rooftop, the air felt cooler and the city lights stretched out below us. That's when I felt it, that small twist in my stomach that told me something was off. The rooftop was surrounded by tall glass panels, clear enough to see the city but reflective enough to catch movement. As I walked toward the edge, I noticed my reflection in the glass, but it wasn't alone. Behind me in the reflection, I saw him. Not the guy standing a few feet away from me, but another version of him, closer than he should have been, smiling in a way that didn't quite match his face in real life. It looked like he was watching me, not the view. My heart jumped, and I turned around fast, expecting him to be right behind me. There was nothing there. Just him, standing where he had been before, leaning casually against the railing, looking relaxed. I told myself it was just lighting, just angles, just my brain filling in gaps. I took a breath and looked back at the glass. The reflection was still there. It didn't move when he moved. It didn't blink when he blinked. It stepped closer in the glass even though he stayed still beside me. Its head tilted slightly like it was studying me. Every time I looked away and back, it was there, always staring directly at me, never at the city. I wanted to leave right then. My body felt tense, like it knew something my brain was still trying to deny. I kept telling myself it was a reflection glitch, the city lights bouncing weirdly off the glass, exhaustion from travel messing with my head. But once I noticed it, I couldn't stop seeing it. Every glass surface in the hotel had one of them. In the elevator mirrors, I saw him standing closer than he actually was. In the lobby windows, I saw multiple versions overlapping each other, slightly out of sync. Back in my room, the bathroom mirror showed him behind me even when the door was locked, and the room was empty. Sometimes there were several of them layered together, some grinning wider than normal, some just watching without expression. They always copied his posture, but not perfectly. They'd move when he didn't. They leaned forward when he stayed back. No matter where I went, they stayed just behind me in the reflections, always present, always watching. The keycard didn't matter. The room didn't matter. The hotel itself felt like it was built out of glass just to trap me in it. The final straw came the next morning when I went to check out. I barely slept, spent most of the night sitting on the bed with the lights on, avoiding mirrors as much as I could. I packed fast, heart pounding the entire time. When I swiped the keycard and opened the door, The hallway was quiet, empty, exactly how it should have been. Then I turned to lock the door behind me and saw him standing down the hall. Just him at first, alone, hands at his sides, watching. For a split second, I thought maybe I was imagining it again. Then I looked at the windows lining the corridor. In every single one, there were more of him. Dozens of them, leaning at different angles, heads tilted, eyes fixed on me. None of them moved, but I could feel them waiting. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I walked to the elevator like my legs were on autopilot. I left the hotel, took a cab to the airport, and never went back. But the image didn't stay behind. Sometimes back home, I catch my reflection in a store window or a dark screen and see him there too, just for a second. I always look closer, hoping it's just a trick of light. It never is.